Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Shaw Auditorium for Monday, March 25, 2013, and this is a regular council meeting. And I'd like to start off by calling the meeting to order, and then right away I'll entertain a motion to recess to an E-Town Hall budget meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved and seconded.
George? Second, George.
Are you? So all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And we'll now move into the electronic portion of the meeting. I've just got a brief little comment I'd like to make. Tonight marks a milestone for public engagement in Nanaimo with the kickoff of the city's first electronic town hall budget meeting. As you may recall, exploring opportunities to host town hall events is a deliverable of our strategic plan. So tonight, I am pleased to see council and staff poised to engage the community using this method. Our event this evening mixes the traditional approach of face-to-face engagement with the popularity of social media to create a meeting environment where citizens can participate either here in the Shaw Auditorium or from home or from wherever they happen to be. To our knowledge, we are the first municipality on Vancouver Island to host an electronic town hall budget meeting, and only one of two municipalities in British Columbia so far. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Councillor Anderson for bringing forward the motion last December suggesting this meeting take place tonight. Also, I'd like to thank our city staff for their hard work in organizing this event, and in particular, I'd like to thank our IT department, without whom none of the development and technology that makes this event possible would have been created. And I might just quickly insert a little comment of my own here that the IT department just recently received a national award. So to Per Christensen and his entire staff, well done. And finally, and most importantly, I'd like to thank everyone who's participating tonight. Your questions and ideas are important, as is your involvement in the community process. I'd like to now pass things over to our Town Hall question presenter, Philip Cooper. Mr. Cooper, you are on.
Thank you, Your Worship. So before we start tonight's meeting, there are a couple of things I just want to quickly go through so that everyone understands how the meeting will proceed. The first thing is to go through a few of the roles that are critical to understand in terms of how the meeting will unfold. So my role tonight is the presenter of the questions. We have a number of other roles that I'll quickly identify. Over here to my right, Doug Holmes is acting as the moderator. His job is to take questions that come in from a number of different channels and make sure that I get them so that I can present them to everyone here this evening. We also have 2 point people. These are individuals that will determine which way the question will go, and that, of course, is our mayor and our city manager, Al Kenning. Their job is to take the question from myself and then determine who on their team is the best person to answer that question. In terms of engagement, what we've done is define a number of ways in which people can get their question out. And the key thing that we want to stress tonight is accessibility of questions. So you can participate by Twitter, and the hashtag for Twitter is NanaimoTH. You can also participate on Facebook by posting a question. We have a web form set up, and that enables you to go online to our website and type in a question, and we'll read it that way. We also have a phone number, and the number for accessing the operator, who will then pass the question on to Doug, is 250-754-4251. And that's a number that you can call from home. And then finally, we have the old school technique. If you've shown up in person, you can come down to the podium and ask your question that way. And just out of curiosity, how many of you do intend on asking questions tonight? If you could just put your hand up. Way to go, Mike. Because part of what I need to do is sort of flip back and forth from the online content to those of us that are here in the audience. So maybe I could just see show of hands again. Okay. If you do ask a question, we have a couple of chairs that are set up over here. And the idea is that you would sit in that chair, and then when I go to ask for questions from the audience, you would come forward. So at some point, you might want to move towards that row of chairs over there. All right, in terms of the timing of the event, we have set aside 1 hour. If we determine that there's a huge demand, we'll extend that by another 30 minutes. and I'll watch the clock to make sure we're not moving into a period of time outside of that. So with all of that said, I'll start with the first question of the evening.
Sorry, Mr. Cooper, just as a suggestion, you may want to make a comment about the fact that if people are at home and have an idea about the questions, don't wait for the first hour and watch the show and then get going on the questions. We'd like them as early as we can because we have a timeline here and we have to cut off the meeting and start our regular scheduled meeting after that. So I'm just encouraging people that are using social media to let us know at the earliest opportunity so we can process it in a timely way.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Good suggestion. The other thing I might also point out, it's not just about questions, it's also about suggestions. If you have a suggestion on the budget, we'll take that as well. So the first question that's coming up tonight, the question is, how does the city measure its debt, and how is debt reflected in tax assessments? And this question has been directed towards city staff.
So, Your Worship, I'm going to ask Mr. Brian Clemens, the Director of Finance, to answer that.
Thank you. This was actually just the subject of a presentation that we did to Council on February 25th. If anybody's really interested in all the details of the city's debt, they can see that presentation on the city's website. But to answer the question that's in front of us, how do we measure the city's debt? The city, you can measure debt in two ways. You can measure it in the amount of money that's borrowed, that's the outstanding debt, or you can measure it in the cost that you spend each year to service that debt, the amount of debt payments, interest that you repay as part of the year. And information that people would be interested in is that at the end of 2012, our outstanding debt was about $33 million, and our annual debt servicing costs in 2012 were $3.5 million. And we can measure this against other municipalities, and in fact we have as part of our balanced scorecard, which is a performance measurement system which is also on the city's internet website. We have some statistics that show that debt servicing as a percentage of revenue, as I said, is about 3.1% for the city, compares to about 4.9% when we're compared to the 12 municipalities closest to us in size. And debt per capita, another way of measuring debt, so how much we've had borrowed divided by the number of people in the community, is $405 for the city versus about $570 per capita for the other 12 municipalities on average.
I just want to add, Your Worship, that the City of Nanaimo is not allowed by law to run an annual operating deficit. So unlike the senior governments, the city always runs with a balanced budget. The only debt it has is related to long-term capital projects, much like a household might have for a mortgage. So there is no operating deficit, just debt related to long-term capital.
Okay.
All right, the next question is, how has the greening of Nanaimo helped reduce the budget? And that question is unassigned.
Well, I think from the City Council standpoint, I think this is something that Councillor Patchy would probably have an interest in. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I'd like to. I just have one example. I'm sure there's more than one, but the city employs an energy manager, a nice fellow by the name of Bill Joyner, who over the last 4 years, by various and sundry energy conservation measures, has managed to save the city $824,000 over 4 years, and that is by saving on gas, oil, and electricity. And that, to me, is a really valid example. That represents, incidentally, 1% in taxes, and so it's an important saving.
Okay, Councillor Johnson, do you want to add something to that?
Thank you. Your Worship, I just wanted to point out to the members of the public and listeners that we did apply for an infrastructure grant last year to increase our cycling opportunities into the south part of Nanaimo. And so we're very keen to see that happen, and we'll be including that again as opportunities arise. We'll be looking for more infrastructure money.
Good, thank you. I see no further questions. Go ahead.
All right. Okay, the next question comes to us off of our website, so that would be the web form as the channel of inquiry. And the question reads, how much does the city spend on cycling infrastructure, and what is the city doing to make cycling a more viable option in Nanaimo? And that's a general question, so it's unassigned.
Well, maybe Councillor Anderson, you want to have a try at that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Spencer, for this question. Right now, from my understanding, the cost that the city spends on cycling infrastructure is roughly $30,000 a year. The city of Nanaimo is currently doing a transportation master plan as well, which is addressing alternative modes of transportation such as transit, cycling, and other modes. So that's expected to be completed in the fall. So from that plan, we should see what council and staff will do in order to make cycling a more viable option within the city.
And I think that might tie into some of the comments you were making,
Yes.
Councillor Johnson. If you want, do you want to just maybe
So,
expand on that again? That's fine.
Yes, I was referring to
But
that question.
we're
I'm sorry.
applying for a grant on that.
Exactly.
Okay,
Your worship, we can make a comment as well.
Sure.
Mr. Hickey, please.
Mayor Rattan, in addition to Councillor Anderson's and Councillor Johnstone's information on cycling infrastructure, we also have in the Parks, Recreation and Culture budget about $375,000 per year for trail maintenance, which a large part of that goes to multi-use trails. And I might add that over the last decade, City Council has put in about $1.6 million to the construction of ENN trails. So we're building infrastructure, and as Councillor Johnstone points out, we're working to get that moving to the south, and that's part of Councillor Anderson's transportation master planning process that a number of councillors are working on.
good, thank you. Done.
All right, the next question comes to us from the website, and it's a general question, so it's unassigned, and the question reads, Nanaimo needs more volleyball courts. The only ones really open to the public are courts at Bowen Park, and in the summer they are rented out by private clubs throughout the city, meaning regular people using them are kicked off, which isn't fair. Again, that's unassigned.
Well, do you want to do that one? I think Councillor Johnson, who's also Chair of Parks, Recreation, Culture, also wants to make a comment. Maybe do you want to start, and then
Sure. I think-
Mr. Kenny can step in.
Well, Your Worship, there are 4 volleyball courts in Bowen Park, as the person that asked the question probably is aware of, and they are booked out. They have to be booked out, and so it is on a first-come, first-served basis. But staff has indicated to me that even at that rate, they're being underutilized at this present time. So there's lots of free time for people to, but they have to, if they want to secure the courts, they must book them. And also, our staff is working very closely with School District 68 in preliminary talks now to try and acquire some more courts in the future. So hopefully that'll help with the
And the booking is done through
booking
Parks,
is done.
Recreation,
Yes,
Culture?
exactly.
Mr. Kenny?
No, that covered my thoughts as well.
Okay. That's it.
All right. The next question comes from Twitter, and it reads, a request for sufficient funding for more free weekday children's parks during the summer. So that's, I guess, a suggestion rather than a question. Any thoughts on that?
Nobody else wants to answer?
Does anyone and staff feel, and because Councillor Johnson's just anxious to go, but is there anyone else?
Yeah, I'll ask Mr. Harding, our Director of Parks, Rec and Culture, to comment.
Yes, so the playground program has been in place for many, many years. The budget's been set for a number of years at the level of service that we have. What we do is move the playground programs around the city where we know where a higher concentration of youth, and also youth that will take part of the program. So the program's been relatively stable where it's been for a number of years, except the sites that we move around have it's just changed. Some of the locations have changed.
Okay, did you want to add anything to it?
No, that's pretty well what I wanted to cover, Your Worship, other than the fact I was just going to comment that we do spend close to $42,000 on that free park for our children, and we're very happy to do that.
Great. That's it.
All right. The next, I guess it's a compliment, actually. It's coming in from Twitter, and they're saying this is a great idea. Thank you very much. So thank you for your feedback. The next question is off of the website, so it's a web form question, and it looks like there's 2 parts to it. Is there money in the 2013 budget for a walking, biking trail south from downtown? And part 2, subsidies to residents for home water conservation devices. So the first one focuses on a biking trail from the downtown, south downtown.
Okay, I think maybe staff may want to comment?
Yes, Your Worship, I'm going to pass the first part to Mr. Hickey, and he'll answer.
Mayor Rattan, as far as the walking biking trail south of downtown Nanaimo, I think Councillor Johnstone and Councillor Anderson touched on it a bit, but we are looking for ways to get an ENN trail extended to the south. This year we actually did put in a grant application, but we're unsuccessful. And in our capital budget this year, we are doing a crossing in the south end of Binky Street across the ENN trail, so that will help us work towards just adding a little more infrastructure there. But in the long term, that's one of the possibilities, is to move to a south end ENN trail extension.
Now, Mr. Hickey, there's a question about subsidies to residents for home water conservation devices. For you
Oh
as
yes,
well.
thank you. Mayor Rattan, in that one, we've got $50,000 a year for toilet rebates. We are working on a water conservation strategy update this year for council, and in that update, we will look at other alternatives for water conservation methods, including maybe commercial businesses and them getting a toilet rebate program as well.
Okay, I see no questions from this end. Thank you.
All right. I'd now like to ask our first question from the audience. So I believe that will be Mike Delves is going to come up and ask his question.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. In such a high-tech evening, I feel a little low-tech here, but I'm here anyway. So my question from the Chamber of Commerce is: commercial tax rates will in 2013 and thereafter be the highest cost per $1,000 at 2.7 times, 2.8 times-ish residential rates, and that's without accounting for the homeowner's grant that's received by homeowner individuals. Commercial tax rates are 21% higher than the average of 12 comparable municipalities as presented by Mr. Clemens, and 23% higher than the Vancouver Island averages. To what does the city account this difference to?
Well, staff may want to have a comment, I'm not sure, but I just maybe would start by saying that this is probably part and parcel with the policy established by the City Council some years ago to reduce industrial taxes. And at that point, there was some concern that our industrial tax base was high, very high, and we were concerned about not only losing some of the primary industrial users, Harmac and Coastland, but also making it disadvantageous for people to come to Nanaimo based on high industrial taxes. And of course, once you start reducing taxes from one entity, it has to be picked up elsewhere. And so this 2013-2014 will be the last year of the scheduled reduction in industrial taxes. And at that point, all the players will be level. And I think all of council is aware that we need to revisit the commercial tax structure and to look at that and see. Because of course, that's a pretty important issue. Councillor Kipton, you're going to? Okay, but you know, I know I can just comment on for those people involved in commercial taxes. It's a concern, and you know, the concern basically is the balance between what is fair and equitable and what the city needs to operate from. And as I say, the residential taxes are not inexpensive, but in my opinion, the next priority for council should be to look at commercial taxes. I don't know if anyone on council wants to comment. Staff?
I was just going to add, Your Worship, that just pursuant to your comments, that council has included in its revenue policy at the intention to address or to look at the commercial tax rates as requested in upcoming years. So whether that will result in changes, I can't comment, but I know it's a priority of council to address.
To look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Delta.
The next question coming up is known as a trending question, and I neglected to explain what a trending question is in my opening. A trending question involves a number of like questions that have come in on a similar topic, and we put that together into a similar theme. So this first question that's trending, and I can tell by the eyebrows that people are keen to hear it. Why did City Hall approve $100,000 in funding for a toilet? And That's a general question, unassigned, so either administration or
Well, my
council
eyebrows
can
went up
answer.
because I swallowed a piece of ice. But I see Councillor Patchy, I think, would be interested in dealing with that.
Why did I expect this one somehow? A couple of reasons. On some of the evening patrols that I have spent with the RCMP over the last couple of years, it has become abundantly clear that the city of Nanaimo, after closing hours on weekends in particular, has a very serious problem with public urination. And porta potties may be a solution to some. And in fact, we have one at the Bastion Parkade that is doing some considerable work. But, you know, it's a matter of pride in your downtown, whether you want to have a collection of porta potties or something that is a little bit more attractive. So the cost is $90,000 plus installation. It wasn't cheap. Sometime after we approved it, the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Area very generously came with $29,000, I believe it was, so that gets our city cost down to roughly 60. And I want to remind you that that decrepit toilet setup that we have in Maffeo Sutton that, you know, is aching to be replaced many years ago cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $60,000. So it needs to be kept in perspective. On one occasion, about a month and a half ago, I was somewhere and someone approached me and said, well, hey, my brother in Washington State has on eBay purchased 4 washrooms, public washrooms that the city of Seattle wanted to dispense with. And the city, if you can believe it or not, spent $1 million apiece on 5 public toilets. The problem was that they were not conducive to what is called CPTED, that is crime prevention through environmental design principles. Because a public place is a public place, and, you know, with the help of the RCMP, we have come to the conclusion that the CPTED aspect of public facilities such as this is really important as well. The Seattle ones, innovative and clever and expensive as they were, had 2 doors that closed completely when somebody used the facility, and it ended up, you know, being a place where people did drugs and drug trading and other things that should not be happening in a public washroom. So my answer really is that if we don't do something that is done with the input of the people that are really concerned about this aspect. Those are the merchants on Commercial Street in this particular instance, and the RCMP. And incidentally, I have seen notices on window shops on commercial streets and some others that very clearly express, washroom facilities for our patrons only. So there is a need. I'll be the first to agree that it's not cheap, but we are trying so many things to improve the downtown. And this council luckily agreed with me that a collection of porta potties or things that work maybe and could be cheaper but are not of the septet variety are just not acceptable. And that's my answer to you.
Okay, I think we have a further comment. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've been aware of this problem for several years. I sat on the Safer Nanaimo committee or probably more than that, maybe even 6 years ago. This has been an issue for businesses and shop owners downtown, as well as citizens who come downtown. It can be a very unpleasant experience for visitors to downtown to encounter urine-soaked doorways or worse. And certainly the businesses there, the storefronts, had serious problems in the morning after some of the evening revelry that would go on downtown. This is it's a very sturdy, I can't think of another word, building for that use. I was in Vancouver recently at the Main Street SkyTrain station, and I think think it was the Main Street SkyTrain station, and there was one there. And when you're looking at a structure like that, you need it to be safe. And certainly the safety aspect of that building was really apparent to me. I think that from a woman's point of view, if I'm going to be downtown in the evening, particularly if I was a young woman downtown in the evenings having to use a public washroom, I want that washroom to be absolutely safe for me. And I don't know that that's something that people take into account. And I think that it's something that you use a gender lens on. And from my point of view, it was money very well spent to keep our streets clean and our citizens safe. And after several years of complaints, I think we've addressed the question, and I think we've done a good job of it. And I don't think we'll be spending serious amounts of money on repairs on it, because it really is a sturdy building and should be good to go for many years to come.
Okay. Councillor McKay, you want to make an observation?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I think most of the people in the room know that I voted against it, and I'll vote against it tomorrow if it were to come up again. That every dime of it came from the taxpayers. So the Business Improvement Association, through their taxes, contributed to that. I'm disappointed that we didn't look at other alternatives. I would like to see 5 or 6 of them downtown. Not that model, but I'd like to see 5 or 6 washrooms downtown. And surely we could have taken that amount of money and done that. But in a democracy, I was outvoted, and that's where we sit. We got one. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Kipp, we need to move along on this one. Go ahead.
We need to move along. Okay, forget it then.
No, do you want to make a comment? No. But I think there was an understanding we're just going to have 2 or 3 comments, but we can do this. We can debate this, but that's the one thing I wasn't too anxious to get into. Sorry? Do you want to say something? Go ahead, Councillor Kipp. The floor is yours.
Well, I'm just wondering the toilet itself, and we do need 4 or 5 toilets down there. I'm not certain of the comfort of the toilet because there's an open bottom, open top, metal frame. I'm not certain how comfortable women will be at night.
Okay. That's our side. Thank you. I don't know, does staff have any comment to make? Okay.
All right, I'd now like to ask for another question from the floor.
Hi, Mayor Rattan, councillors. I just want to say that, like I haven't owned a car for 20 years. I ride a bike for 99% of the time, and that's why I'm so healthy at 70. And, I'd like you to seriously consider, there is no place. More and more people are riding on the sidewalks. I ride on the sidewalks because there is no place for bicycles. And I'd like you to seriously consider, from the ferry into downtown, Stewart Avenue, there's a really long highway. People could come from Vancouver on their bicycles, and the reason you can't ride on that road is because of the cars. There's already a double lane. Roads are meant to transport goods and people, but the cars are parked there. Cars should not be parked there. They're parked there because, believe me, I can take a measuring tape and you cannot get by there. It is dangerous to ride because there is no place for bicycles, seriously. And this would be a lot happier, healthier town. And get the cars off the main roads, and then people could come straight from Vancouver, they could come right down to Nanaimo, and Nanaimo will be a happy, cleaner place.
I think the traffic along Stewart Avenue is quite quickly. Before you go, Bernie, we've got Councillor Anderson. Did you want to? You're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I couldn't agree with you more. I'm an avid cyclist myself. I actually bike to work today, not to this specific meeting. Yeah. But one of the things that I would like to see in our transportation plan is more separated bike lanes, because I think one of the biggest issues that's within the community for cyclists is the perception that it's not safe to ride on the roads, and the aspect that you talked about with cars being on the road. Albert Street is a perfect example of that issue where you have people parked on the road, then you have a shared bike lane, and then you have people driving in the middle of the road. So
You can't share the road with the cars. Like, really, it's dangerous. It's highly, highly dangerous.
well, my perception is that those little pictures of people on the road are what you're going to look like after you've ridden your bike on the road. But anyways, so hopefully after we're done the Transportation Master Plan, we'll see more of those types of things happening.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Knight, go ahead.
Thank you. Bruni?
I believe Councillor McKay is...
Bruni. I couldn't agree with you more. So, one of the items up for discussion tonight is going to be our waterfront development down at...
Say that again, I can't hear you.
One of the items tonight that we're going to be talking about is our waterfront development. And I'm going to put forward a motion that we invite Gail Paralosa from 8to80.org. Check it out, 8to80cities.org. And this is about cities that are built for people, not cars. This is for cities that are built for people who walk and who cycle and enjoy their parks and enjoy their open spaces. And I really think it's a great opportunity with that purchase that we're about to make down there to get involved and let them show us how to do it. So I hope that helps.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Graves, do you want to have for the delegation?
Just as a comment. I think she can hear me. Anyway, I couldn't agree more as well. And unlike, I'm also on the Transportation Committee. George Anderson's not the only one. I'm on it, and Bill McKay's on it as well. And we've had a lot of discussions about biking and the fact that we've only really put $30,000 towards the biking. And I don't think that's enough money. I think what hurts us, a lot of what hurts us is the fact that we have to wear helmets. And a lot of people do not want to wear helmets, especially women, because when they get to work, their hair's a mess. And it's a big issue. And there's also not facilities to take a shower when you get to work, and so on and so forth. So it's very inconvenient. I went to a presentation there in, I guess it was last year. An urban planner from Copenhagen was in Vancouver, and he was invited over here, and I think they held it at the museum. And it was an excellent presentation, and they started out with the same as we are now, and I can't remember the percentages, but so many of them now. I mean, there's more bikes than there are cars. And so I think we can make it happen here. I know we've been pushing for it, and it's great to bike, and we got the weather for it too. So that's all I got to say.
Okay, well, I think it's important we don't discourage people from wearing helmets, and I want to point out that Councillor Anderson wears a helmet. Helmets save lives, reduce injuries.
And the fire department goes out to all the bike accidents.
We're done.
All right.
I don't think staff want to jump on that, do they? Okay.
Okay. Just as a time watch, we've hit the first 30 minutes, so we have another 30 minutes remaining in the official part of the meeting. Now, for the next question, it comes to us via the website, and the question reads, how much money or other levels of government contributing to the cost of the water treatment facility? Another government body demands that the dam in Harwood be removed or changed. What government body will help with the cost of that, and at what percentage?
Okay, I think Councillor Patchy has some views on this. I just might point out that both the federal and provincial governments did contribute to the water treatment facility, and they contributed approximately $18 million, about $9 million each. So it's a huge undertaking, and that leaves a substantial shortfall, but we certainly are appreciative of the contribution by those two levels of government. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mrs. von Stackelberg, for asking that. I'm doing this from memory. The water treatment plant, and Mr. Clements, correct me if you need to, is $65 million. I believe that there's a combined contribution from senior levels of government of almost $35 million. And I think that is 16 million and 17 million from the province and the feds, respectively. And I think that hopefully would answer the question. So that said, It's a mandated water treatment plant. It's a classic example of downloading. We did not expect that.
Was Mr. Clements, are you going to make a comment on that?
Your worship, I don't need to correct Councillor Patchy. He's quite accurate. The number for the $65 million project is just a little bit under $35 million in both federal and provincial funding.
Thank you.
Okay.
And as far as the second part of that question goes, I'm not aware that there's another government body that's demanding the removal of the Harewood Dam, so maybe the city manager could comment on that.
Well, I just wanted to comment on the information about the government assistance to the water treatment plant, because there was different numbers mentioned by each of you, and you're actually both correct. I think the mayor was referring to the Building Canada Fund,
yes,
which is $18 million shared 50-50 federal and provincial. But there's also money from the Canada Works Fund, which is the gas tax, which is another 17 million. So, but that's federal only, and that's the gas tax. So I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't confusion in the public on that. With regard to the question about the funding for the Colliery Dam project, did you want to address that, Your Worship?
No, go ahead.
So at this point, there are no commitments from senior governments to provide assistance with that. I know council through the mayor has written to our MLAs and has asked them if they're aware of any assistance available. At a staff level, we've canvassed all of the programs that we're aware of, and haven't found any potential source of senior government money for that project.
And I might just add, I think that MLA Doug Routley brought it up in the provincial government on the floor, and did point out the need that we have in Nanaimo here. We're hopeful that some additional funding will be found at some level from either the province or the federal government. Councillor Brennan, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to comment on the inference that other levels of government sort of walk in and without reason or unreasonably set standards that cities have to meet. And I think it's really important to remember that we rely on our public health bodies and the dam safety branch to set standards in the public interest, to set standards that have to be met so that everyone's health, so that the public's health is protected. And in both these instances, I think that, from my point of view, that's what happened, that our public health body stepped in and said, we have set these standards, we need to ensure public health around our water sources and the facilities that we use to bring us water. And in terms of the dams, it's the same situation. The provincial body who sets these standards does so not in a vacuum. They do it in order to set standards that everyone meets, and that's in order to keep citizens safe. So I don't think that it's fair to imply that government steps in unwarranted. These are not targets. They're not targeting Nanaimo. There's other cities in the province that have had to and are faced with the same costs of building the treatment for water. I do agree that once standards are set that are much higher than are in existence, that the senior levels of government need to step in and assist us with the costs. But the fact that they set standards is really all to the better for us as citizens.
Yeah, good clarification. Councillor Kipp.
No. And it's almost debate. It's not answering the question.
So we're done.
Okay, this next question is brought to us off of the website, and I guess it's more of a request than a question. It reads, allocate some funding to repair the Colliery dams.
Is there...
I can provide a response, and council members...
Okay, and Councillor Kipp has a comment too.
Go ahead.
So I was going to comment that last meeting, council did allocate 2.5 million from its surplus towards the Colliery Dam project. So council has made a good start on funding the cost. We're not certain yet what the final cost will be. It has been expected that any of the remainder costs would be financed through debt.
Councillor Kip.
Can I have a clarification? Was the 2.5 million was put for removal of the dam in the budget, or was it just the dam project?
Well, council has provided direction, twofold direction. One direction is that it's intending to remove the dams, and it subsequently refined that by asking staff to find out more information about the alternatives, which leads one to conclude that council may change its view once it has that new information. But while we're attaining that new information, we're also proceeding with the design on the removal. But I think that council has made, by default, certainly the inference that it's going to look at other alternatives. So the money has been set aside for whatever that alternative is. We expect it's going to cost significant money.
But there'll be a cost either way, obviously. Councillor Kip.
Yeah, I guess my concern with the Colliery Dam funding, it goes along with a lot of other things. We are being requested for Pioneer Park, we're being requested for Lindley Valley, the Colliery Dams, and the Colliery Dams are hugely important to myself. I hope we choose the 4 cultural pillars, or our 4 pillars, which includes cultural values in this. We haven't allocated any money currently for the repair of the dams, I don't believe, other than the studies. So that was my answer for that.
Okay. That's it.
All right. I'd now like to ask for another question from the floor.
In a time of economic difficulty for many of our citizens, I would like to ask each and every one of the council for a very brief answer into how they see the proportion of our budget that should go to necessary items and that proportion which would go to the nice items. You know, families have to buckle down. They have to decide, maybe we can't do this, maybe we can't do that. Times are tough. So I don't believe, from listening to council over the years, that there is any generalized view of the proportion of public money that should be spent on the necessary versus the nice. I do believe that there are different individual answers, and I would be happy to hear them.
You know, I think one of the challenges, and there are several answers coming from the speakers. I know one of the challenges that council and staff have is the unforeseen expenses. A year ago, the Colliery Dam wasn't an issue, and we hadn't budgeted for it nor planned for it. So sometimes it's very, very difficult to commit a flat percentage or a certain amount of money without being able to look into the crystal ball and see what kind of challenges are coming down. But there's several others, and they'll share their thoughts. Councillor Kip starts, Councillor Patchy, Councillor Greaves, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Kip.
Well, thank you. I'm going to just start with some of the economic challenges. Of course, the global economy is on an absolute uncertainty right now. We're seeing tons of ships sitting around across the world. If you look on the world maps, products not moving across our world. Governments are downloading. Demands for services from the public increase. Today, we haven't heard a lot about cutting funds. We've heard about how we want to spend more. So I haven't seen a lot of cut this, cut that. Demands for service from the public are increasing. The policing costs are rising and public safety costs are rising. The reduction of investment income concerns me too. And this record low interest rates right now too, so people aren't making big capital and capital investments because they're concerned about it. Then I refer to page 9 of our financial plan, and about this, well, there's dots that say public expectations are hard, public opinion ranging from shrink government to eliminate non-essential services is a question. The bans for more social, cultural, recreational services to promote more healthy, balanced community. Implementation of sustainability initiatives, the global action charters, which have been reduced. Now comes the one that I like that's in here, and I'm going to ask my peers to answer this for me. In order to continue providing adequate services under these conditions, Council will need to examine and prioritize city services in order to provide services acceptable to the public while continuing to achieve a long-term vision. If that doesn't spell core review to me, I don't know what it does.
Necessary versus nice. Core review, same thing in my mind.
I got it out.
But what's the proportion that you would suggest?
I would suggest we have to spend on infrastructure. We could cut flowers and plant vegetables and food. could do water conservation initiatives. Water, food, shelter, and special needs is my mandate.
Councillor Pachi.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Boland, for that question. There is no doubt in my mind that there is a tax fatigue coming, if it isn't here already, particularly for seniors on fixed incomes and others. So I think it is time that we have a review. I'm not sure that should be a core review, but I believe that we should have a review as far as services are concerned. But it's going to be a very difficult proposition in that what is nice to one and not necessary to another may be just the opposite for the next person. So it would have to be a process with the fullest complement of public input, and then we'd have to draw our conclusions from something there. But I think it's overdue, yes.
Well, it is difficult for families to do as well. It's difficult for any family, any organization, but there are times when it has to be done.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
That's really the gist of my question, what your individual opinions are of where we stand right now in that mix, and what maybe we should think about doing about it.
My point is that I need to get a much clearer picture than I have now as to what we could consider for cuts as far as services is concerned. And it's obvious that that is the only way we are going to be able to do some of the other things that are coming. For instance, the people that want the commercial rate down to a much lower level, I think they probably would be asking for the same kind of review as far as services are concerned. And I'm fine to do that, provided it is broad enough so that all of us have a good feeling as to what services would people be prepared to do without? And that is the question for me.
Yeah, I think if you wait until people quit asking you for things, nothing will ever happen, because...
Okay, there's still some other speakers, but I might just want to comment, and Mr. Kenny may want to add something to it, but part of our strategic plan that we've developed is a requirement that we'll be going through a review of these various programs. And Mr. Kenny, you want to just expand on that a bit?
Sure. Yeah, it is actually part of Council's direction in the strategic plan that Council and staff together undertake a service level review. And it's particularly important given the asset management program that we're now on, in that when you look at an asset coming to the end of its life, you not only want to look at the cost of replacing, you also want to look at whether you want to replace it at all. And that may mean that you have to accept a lower level of service. For example, we're now putting a certain amount of money every year into road maintenance. And I guess there's a question, a service level review would ask the question about whether that's the appropriate amount, or whether people would be happy with a few more potholes on the road, knowing that it means less money, or whether they're wanting less potholes. So every service we undertake, we're looking to undertake a review to try and engage the public about what level of service they would like to see.
Okay, thank you. We've got 3 more people. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Worship. I think you asked, is there a percentage allotted, if I remember correctly, and in my mind there is not. Necessary and nice. Nice has to do with quality of living, I would imagine. And I know we've had a lot of answers here, we'll probably get more, and I don't really have much to add because I think the city manager hit the nail on the head with the review. But I mean, for example, the Nanaimo Aquatic Center, is that necessary or is that nice? And there's a lot of people out there that think that's necessary because they have young children or whatever. So there's that kind of a thing happening, right? So I have nothing else to add than that. It's just as simple as that, really.
Okay, we have Councillor Johnson and Councillor Brennan, and then we'll wrap up our side because we're eating up a lot of time for other people. Councillor?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I was going to make pretty much the same statements that Councillor Greaves did, and I was going to ask you, flip it back into your camp as to what was necessary and what was nice. But people move here, Mr. Boland, because of the quality of place, the amenities that we provide for. We are able to retain talented, well-educated people from our universities because we have the amenities to offer them. We attract people from outside because we have those amenities to offer them. And I can be very sure that if we were to close some of our facilities or our recreational centers for 2 or 3 days a week to make a cut in our budget, there'd be a human outcry, because that's what people expect to have in our community. What you, I'm sure, are referring to as the nice things.
I agree with you. You're in a hard spot because any of these things, somebody's going to squeal about, just like
It's
the
a balance, it's a
theater.
pendulum.
But if I understand what you're saying that we're at a perfect level of budget right now. This is the best we could possibly do.
Okay, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. The first thing I'd like to say is that when you begin by talking about taxpayer fatigue, you're already asking leading questions, and you have an answer, and that is that there is taxpayer fatigue. I would challenge you on that. I would challenge you on that because I'm looking at the questions that we're getting tonight, and I'm really not seeing that kind of remark or that kind of comment. I think that we demonstrate responsible budgeting. I think we demonstrate responsible spending, and I think this is what taxpayers want. They want us to be seen to be responsible. I don't think they're interested in having us throw out a figure of 80%, 20%, and try to fit real life into some sort of arithmetic calculation as to what's good and what's not, and what's naughty and what's nice. We had the survey done by one of the survey companies in BC, and they told us that their polling showed that people were, in Nanaimo, about 90% of people who answered were satisfied with the services that they were receiving, and they were satisfied with the city. So I'm going to take that as my lead, and I'm going to take that as my touchstone, rather than say that there's taxpayer fatigue when I quite frankly don't see the evidence of it. You may, but it certainly isn't showing up here tonight, and people really want to know, how are you going to enhance the city that I live in for the tax dollars I pay you?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Bowman.
The next question comes to us from the website, and it reads, what is the city doing to rein in the costs of firefighters?
Mr. Gunning, you look...
Well, I can provide some comments, and council members may want to as well.
Yeah, they will.
But council has provided direction that a review be undertaken of the fire plan. Council currently has a 10-year fire plan. Actually, it's over 12 years. And a review has been undertaken to determine if moving forward on the plan is the most cost-effective way forward to achieve the higher service levels desired, or whether there's other ways that could save money. So that's one thing that council has initiated. As well, I want to say that firefighters are doing a lot more than just firefighting now. I think 64% of their calls last year were for medical aid. So when people talk about firefighters, I don't think they think about the other services they provide. They also do a lot of fire prevention work, and they will inspect people's car seat installations. So there's a lot of additional duties that they do. With regard to the actual costs of a firefighter, the firefighter wages, whether we like it or not, through the legal convention, are basically tied to Vancouver rates. So the cost of a firefighter is pretty well fixed within fairly modest limits. So there's limited things a person can do to deal with that.
And that basically is the standard for British Columbia then, not simply just Vancouver. And the other thing too is, we have a contractual obligation. We've got an agreement with the IAFF on it, which obviously we need to honor, and we are. There's also a lot of expense concern with the acquisition of new equipment all the time, and I think it was maybe 2 years ago when we bought a new snorkel truck, and I think it was $1.2 million. I almost fainted. But the cost of equipment's going up, and new fire halls, as Nanaimo continues to expand and grow, new fire halls are a part of it. So a lot of these expenses are difficult to challenge. We have two more speakers, Councillor Brennan and then Councillor Greaves. Councillor Brennan.
I think that protective services are probably one of the most, if not the most important service that a city provides to its citizens. And again, the question is designed to elicit a certain answer, and that is, oh my, the firefighting costs are out of control. That's the assumption contained in the question, and I challenge that as well. I think that we get good service for what we pay, and because protection services are so important to our citizens, I don't think that they are out of control. I think that we pay for what we get, and it's very important. And I would add that when you look in the regional district, the kinds of services that are offered in different areas of the regional district from north to south vary wildly. And some areas have far more services than others. But there's one service that every one of them has, and that's fire service, because people want to know when they go to bed at night that if anything happens to their home, there's going to be somebody at their door with a great big hose putting it out. So I think that's important.
Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Richard. Everybody stole my thunder. So this goes back to the question, is it necessary and nice? And of course, firefighting and police and the roads and so on are necessary. So it's a necessary evil. And as the city manager said, we're in the process of a 10-year plan. And I think we would expect sooner rather than later, we'll have another new fire hall and another 20 firefighters being hired. So if we're talking about reining in the costs, they're going to go up, unfortunately, but that's a necessary evil. Now, what we are doing to rein in the costs is we're using paid-on-call firefighters at a lesser wage, and there's about 47 of them presently, and that's in halls 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you've got to realize that firefighting is basically a blue-collar unionized job. So it's like an electrician or a plumber, and you know how much they cost. So staff is diligently working on reducing unnecessary overtime. I know they've, when I was involved, they reduced the overtime for captains and now lieutenants, and now they're working on firefighters. So they're reining in the costs, and I think they're doing a very good job of it. They're going to arbitration with the firefighters, and that's the last kick of the can before the city's going right to the end of the negotiations to try to get what we want them to get, and that's the process. I don't know if I think this all came, I don't know why they want to rein in firefighters' costs. Maybe this arose from the October article in the paper last year that some of the captains were making $100,000. And so everybody got a little upset about that. But as the city manager and also the mayor said, this is in line with pretty well every city in British Columbia. So we're not out of line.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I make my comment, I'm looking at the time at 7:58, and I would just move that we extend until 8:30 because we allotted an extra 30 minutes, if that's okay with the rest of council.
My suggestion might be just continue on, and if it's 8:20 or 8:22, whenever we reach the end, then we'll go into our regular session.
Well, I would just make the comment that I think that our firefighters and our RCMP all do very valuable work for our city, but I don't think that it comes at any cost, and $100,000 for a lot of individuals within the who are firefighters. There's a lot of white-collar individuals who aren't making that as well. So I would say that I look forward to when we get our fire plan, because I will be taking a look at it, as I'm sure that the rest of council as well will be taking a look at it in depth.
Councillor Kip.
Yeah, this is an extremely important part of our community. We don't actually have to have firefighters. It's just one of the local government rules. We have to have inspectors and things, but we do have firefighters, and we need them. It's really interesting, as Councillor Brennan says, one of our most important departments. And we don't have a public services committee or protective services committee. Most other communities do, and we have no insight. Like we have a development community, we have a Parks and Rec committees, we have a safer committee that's on a downtown, but we don't have a protective services committee. Fire, police, bylaw, huge amounts of money, not much political oversight as far as a committee goes.
Okay, I think that's our side. Thank you.
All right, the next question comes to us off of the website, and the question reads, I don't understand why we should subsidize the VICC. Is there a good reason taxpayers should have to shoulder the burden? That's a general question unassigned.
Okay. I looked over at staff, and staff is pointing back here.
I'm certainly happy to answer.
No, but we'll start with.
I noticed that Councillor Johnstone pushed her button there.
Yeah, I saw too, you know.
And
You were worried I missed it, I think, here. Councillor Johnstone.
Well, my answer is going to be very simple to the Harbour City SCO that posed this question. The reason we subsidize the building is because the citizens of Nanaimo voted in a referendum to build a conference center. It's our building, we own it, the taxpayers of the city own it. All other facilities in the city, Your Worship, are subsidized. Our pools are subsidized, our rinks are subsidized, and our VICC is subsidized.
Your Worship, we can give a comment too on the extent of the usage of the facility through Mr. Howitt.
Okay, we've got, sorry, have you finished?
Yes.
Okay. And Councillor McKay, you had a thought?
I'll wait, Mr. Howitt.
Okay, Mr. Howitt.
Your Worship, when the conference center was contemplated, it was contemplated primarily as an economic generator, and it had a built-in deficit or subsidy in the facility before it even opened. So it was always intended to be a subsidized service, and its primary reason for that is to generate economic activity for Nanaimo. So if we use 2012 as an example, and using industry standards, you could estimate that we brought in approximately $8 million in direct spending in Nanaimo as a result of delegates that stayed in Nanaimo to go to a conference.
Okay. I think the reality that sometimes it's overlooked the fact that the conference center is there. I mean, we can't go back and say, well, should it be built? It's here. It belongs to the taxpayers. It belongs to the city of Nanaimo. And I think what we on council are trying to do to the best of our ability, with staff support obviously, is to find out how we can mitigate or reduce where we can the dependency on the taxpayer. And it's not easy, but that's part of our job, and we're trying to see if we can achieve that goal. Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I agree with Mr. Howitt that the VICC, it's here. We own it. It's built. And it was intended to be an economic generator. It was intended to be subsidized. Other facilities around the community, such as swimming pools and skating rinks and hockey rinks and whatnot, are not intended to be an economic generator per se. This was. Are we going to look for ways to improve its bottom line? Absolutely. From day to day and on we go, looking to improve the bottom line of this facility, to make it something that Nanaimo can be proud of. Is it underperforming? Yes. Do we want to do better? Yes.
Okay, that's our side. Nope, okay.
All right. I'm just going to break from the order here slightly to ask a phone question that's come up. And that question is, I feel our city is no different than a business, but I don't feel the city operates that way. They should be able to live within the tax dollars. Why can't we run the business of the city like a business? And that's a general question, undirected.
Well, anxious to jump into this one. So, Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill, for that question. I have a bit of a problem with the equation that to run a municipality is the same as running a business. I don't think it is, for a number of reasons. Businesses, when they cannot produce something that is being sold, they'll stop producing that kind of item and go on, regardless of what the consequences are. Municipal governance is very different in that we try to provide the basics, that is sewer and water and all those things that need to be looked after. And we can't just walk away from that. That's part of our responsibility, regardless of what happens to some of that stuff. Asset management is a very good example. If we were running this like a business, we walk away from the sewers or walk away from a water treatment plant or whatever. So I don't think the comparison is correct. Now, that does not mean that the city should not be running things in as economical and as efficient a manner as we possibly can. And I think we're really trying our best to do that. That said, though, that kind of comparison bothers me, and I don't think it's correct.
I think I might just point out too that I think their city manager alluded to it earlier, that a city isn't able to run a deficit by law. And the point is that if you're running a small business and you find you're going into the red, you can go to your favorite lending institution and hopefully they'll help you carry through the tougher times. But the city doesn't have that luxury, so there's an awful lot of overhead that we have to accept and pay for, no matter how financially challenging the times are for us. And it is a concern, but I think everyone on council here is cognizant of that, and I think everyone is also doing all we can to mitigate the costs and tax increases where we can. Anything from staff? And if not, that's us.
All right, I'd like to take another question from the floor.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd just like to hear from each member of Council what is one measure that you are personally considering as a means of possibly reducing the residential property taxes this year.
Okay, I don't know if we want to get into it. Do we have a time to get everyone involved? We're running really quite a bit behind schedule. Are there many questions left on this thing? When everyone was trying to solicit everyone's opinion, it's very, very time consuming.
We do have quite a few questions still remaining, so
Okay.
I'll leave that up to you to decide how you want to.
Okay, well,
Maybe
does
just
someone
one
want
or
to just
two.
take this question, or does staff want to have a go at it?
I don't think Mr. Taylor wants to hear from staff, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just answer quickly. One of the reasons why we did this e-town hall was to hear what the community wanted us to look at. And so after this, I'm sure all of us on council will sit down, have a conversation, and see what possibilities there may or may not be.
Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, currently with the budget, it seems like we're into that process. We've already adopted it by motion. But I'm looking to the future, what our pipe, like our standards of engineering, what they're going to be in the future, how they go along with global warming. Starting to look at the long-term things we're investing in our infrastructure, those type of issues, looking at reductions of the buildings we're building now and putting forth ideas of how we can reduce the cost of our buildings, those type of things.
Okay. That would be it.
Okay, any thoughts from staff? Okay, thank you.
The next question comes from the website again, and it's directed actually at Mr. Kenning specifically, and it reads, Mr. Kenning, why did you propose the budget the way you did? And if council was to ask for reductions to the budget, what areas would you look for cuts, and what might the implications be?
Mr. Kenning?
Your Worship, the budget was prepared based on what it would take to provide the current level of services. And the base increase is 1.6%. That's before the 1% asset management levy. And that's pretty close to the rate of inflation, which I think is reasonable given that the RCMP costs alone are up 7.3%. And the library, another large input to our budget, is up 6.8%. So to come in with a budget with a tax increase of 1.6%, close to the rate of inflation, given those factors and our desire to maintain service levels for the community, I thought it was a reasonable recommendation and still do.
Okay, I see no further questions from this side.
All right. From the website, this is a general question. How much money is spent maintaining the NIC, the NAC, Oliver Woods, Bowen, and all recreation facilities per year? What percentage of the population uses these facilities?
I wonder, is this something that Parks and Rec will have? And
Please, I'm assuming the question is more, how do we keep these operational, not just the maintenance of them? And it will include all the pools, the arenas. So our gross expenditures for all our recreation facilities is 14 million. Revenue is about 5.5 million that those facilities generate. So a net expenditure about 8.5 million.
On the percentage of the population using the
So
facilities?
we don't have a total part of the percentage. To also realize that the facilities do serve the region. So we have contributing areas of Gabriola, Cedar, Lanceville, the municipality of Lanceville, and Extension. We don't have percentages, just some quick numbers though. We have over 500,000 admissions to the pools, 13,000 hours of ice time rental, and about 50 to 55,000 program registrations a year. We don't have a percentage of that, what percentage of the population uses them.
Okay. I see no further questions here.
All right, the next question, again from the website. How much money is the city giving in tax exemptions and grants? Why are we doing this? And that is unassigned.
Well, maybe staff might have the figures for us, and then I think council may choose to make a comment on it.
Sure, for the figures, I'll ask Mr. Clemens to respond.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The total amount that's given out in permissive tax exemptions is equivalent to $1.3 million in property taxes. Many of the properties that get property tax exemptions are buildings that are either owned by the city and occupied by groups, and the Port Theatre is maybe the best example of that, which receives a permissive tax exemption. If anybody's interested in exactly which organizations receive permissive tax exemptions, that's included in the annual municipal report, which is on the city's website, and the full list of all properties is available there. We also publish it in the newspaper once a year. As for grants, I guess it depends a little bit on what you mean by what kinds of grants, but I'm assuming we're talking about grants to cultural and social service agencies, and that works out to about $1.9 million a year.
Okay, thank you. We have Councillor Kipp and Councillor Johnson. Councillor Kipp?
My point on this one is that these are businesses or operations like nonprofit groups that run in our community and do a lot of those things under the social equity and the cultural pillars in our community, and even some environmental groups and churches and things. So things that help the community, add that cultural value, add that thing we're looking at, pride of place, those type of issues. So, and it's under the Municipal Act and under the previous government acts that these places could get and apply for a residential reduction. Thank you. Or a tax reduction, sorry.
Councillor Johnstone.
And I agree with Councillor Kipp exactly. That's one of the prime reasons we provide grants to our non-for-profit societies is to acknowledge and show our appreciation for the great effort our volunteers make in our community to make Nanaimo a better place for all our citizens. So it's a recognition of hard work by our community volunteers.
And I think there's a huge variety of groups and organizations that apply for funding and grants, and foremost, I think, is a lot of sports groups to compete outside of town, which we support as a sports community here. You know, when you have a chance to look at the list and of those that have been qualified, and I think it's important to point out too that when you see the list, people like Councillor Brennan and others on the committee go through and do a tremendous job in looking at each individual request, and some are accepted, some are reduced, and some are not accepted at all. And it's a big undertaking, but you know, I don't think any of the money is ever granted in a frivolous manner. I think every applicant is considered at length, and I think the decision made by council and staff is based on sound reasoning. You know, in a perfect world, nobody would need money, but the reality is there are a lot of volunteer groups and sports groups that simply wouldn't be able to participate in some of the events that they're doing without financial aid from the city. Councillor Brennan. No, Councillor Brennan. Councillor Brennan.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. You're on.
This Councillor Brennan.
Oh, yeah.
That Councillor Brennan.
The other one, yeah. One of the reasons that we do this is because it provides services that we want to see in our community, but that we don't want to pay for the full amount. In essence, that's what it is. So in terms of the food bank, recently the city gave the food bank a $60,000 grant to purchase a refrigerator truck, so that they could better serve the needs of the organizations that provide meal programs and food to people in our community who don't have enough, people who are hungry. And this is a way for the city to support those initiatives, but not be the employer in those cases. So whether you agree with that model or not, that's one of the things that the grant money goes towards. I'm on the Social Planning Advisory Committee, and I think twice a year we go through an exercise of a strategic plan, in essence, as to what social issues there are in the community and where the committee thinks it's best to target the money. And then we go through an exercise of a call for proposals, and the money is then dispersed to those agencies and those programs that best suit the strategic plan. So it's well thought out, and it is a method of the city providing funds so that we can have services that we might not otherwise have. And yes, it is a form of downloading, and there's absolutely no question that since about 2001, there's been serious downloading of social programs in this province. There has been a very strong sentiment expressed by the community over and over again that if the provincial government and the federal government are not going to provide these services, then the city really needs to figure out a way that the needs of those agencies can be met, and that's a lot of the grant money goes towards that.
Okay, Councillor Patchy, now you're on.
Is it really my turn?
Really your turn, really truly.
Well, I just want to add a word about the cultural grants that this city dispenses, since I'm the chair of the cultural committee. I can tell you that the organizations that that ask for funding are organizations that, because we have adopted as a council the fourth pillar of sustainability, as that being cultural vitality, we're very much aware that a lot of those agencies and not-for-profits that ask for help are doing so because they've been left in the lurch by senior government again. A lot of them used to depend, maybe too much, but on gaming funds that were drastically reduced by the provincial government, and so we are. When it comes to cultural operating grants, I can tell you that the amount that we are being asked for is at least 3 times higher than the money that we have to spend, because it's done on a per capita basis. And I tell you, it's the stuff that sleepless nights are made of, because they are worthwhile, they need to be sustained, and even we don't have enough money to do it. So, but it's vital that we do it, no doubt about it.
All right, I'm just going to break from the order here and ask a trending question. This question reads, how do our tax rates compare to other BC cities of similar size? And that's undirected.
Okay, I think staff might have that.
Yep, I'll ask Mr. Clemens to respond, Your Worship.
Yep, Mr. Clemens.
Yes, thank you. Once again, this was the subject of a presentation that was made to council just a couple of weeks ago on March the 4th, so if anybody's interested, they could tune into that presentation and watch the whole thing. The short answer to the question is that the way that we compare ourselves to other municipalities is on the total taxes and user fees on a house of an average assessment. So we don't just look at the taxes, we also add in the amounts paid for water, sewer, and garbage, because different municipalities package those taxes and user fees differently. So in order to properly compare ourselves, we need to look at the whole package. So in the, if you take the 12 municipalities that are closest to Nanaimo in size, so the 6 larger than us and the 6 smaller than us, the average amount that they pay for the municipal taxes, so the city portion of their property taxes, is $1,915. For Nanaimo, for an average house of average assessment, that number is $1,829, so it's a little bit less. The total package, so all the taxes they pay to all agencies, school, hospital, regional district, everything that they pay for water, sewer, and garbage, the average is about $4,049 for those 12 municipalities, and the cities is about $3,500. And if anybody wants to see more information, again, there's a slide on this in the presentation that was done to council on March the 4th.
Thank you.
I just want to make one further comment, Your Worship. Brian, Mr. Clemens has spoken about residential rates. But as we heard earlier in this evening, I think there is a concern that our commercial rates are somewhat higher than other communities, and that's why I know the Chamber of Commerce raised that, and you responded to that already.
Thank you.
All right. Again, I'm going to break from the order slightly and ask another trending question. This one comes to us from Twitter, and the question reads, I suggest that the city implement a year-long new spending freeze in order to reduce deficit and overspending. Why was the motion to reduce city taxes moved in January by Councillor Beswick defeated? And that is unassigned from Twitter.
I don't know that, Councillor Anderson.
Mr. Chair, I can speak for myself in that Councillor Beswick made a motion to reduce the budget up to 5%, and I was not in favor of that because unless it's going to be a permanent 5%, moving projects into the future for future generations to pay for, as I don't see as a way of actually reducing taxes. That, in my mind, actually just goes on to compound the issue and make it even more difficult for us to deal with. So had Councillor Beswick made a motion that said we're going to reduce a permanent 5% from the budget, I would have been in favor of that, but because it was very vague and wasn't specific, I couldn't vote in favor of it.
Okay.
All right.
You want to go, Councillor Kipp?
Well, I did vote in favor of it, and I'd hope that we could actually pass the budget to our staff, because it's their budget that they take our policies and try and administer, and I'd hope they could cut back. I mean, I think 5%, and if they could have recommended over the 5-year plan, 5% each time. That's why I supported it. I don't think 5% is a tough cut. I think people could find it very easy, but that was a democratic vote, and that vote was lost.
Okay. Oh, Councillor Graves.
I just wanted to, this is a tough one to get your head around because, say for example, in the arbitration, and I'm just top of head right here, is the firefighters get 3% raise. So how do you keep it, and that's just one simple area. So how would you keep the freeze 5%, what is it here? You want a 5% reduction. So how do you do that when, say, for example, the firefighters get a 3% raise? Or the dams have to be taken out for $7 million or renovated for $20 million. How do you cut 5% from that when you actually need $20 million more dollars? So it's a real tough thing to get your head around is the reduction when you have to, and you constantly need more money because of the asset management that we're dealing with right now. And we have to increase our taxes 1% as it is just to cover that. So anyway, that's...
And I think Mr. Kenyon also pointed out earlier tonight that we've got a huge increase in policing, the facing, and of course the library is also going to be a massive increase as well. And so it's very hard, I think, to just ignore the things we have a contractual obligation to do. Councillor Patchy, then Councillor McKay, then Councillor Kipp.
Thank you, Worship. Well, I believe, as the city manager states in the preamble of the 5-year plan that we're dealing with, that we are looking at a status quo budget. And that means that, in a budget of 175, almost $176 million, where we have managed not to cut services and still come in with a surplus of 2.5 is not bad going in my books. And I believe that the 1.6 base rate increase compared to just about anywhere else that I have looked at is pretty decent. That's not to say that we should not have a review, and I think we will have a review over the balance of this year to see what kind of cuts the population is willing to take. But eventually, I feel like Councillor Brennan expressed some time ago when this 5% cut came off, that the bottom line is that we have to decide what is going to be cut. And we have to make some tough choices there. And yes, so I would like to have a review. And I'm not talking complete core review, but I would like to have a review that gives me a clear picture as to what the services are that the people of this community are willing to dispense with for a certain amount of time, if necessary.
Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know why it's such a mystery why we can't cut our budget by 5%. You just drop every budget item by 5%. It's real easy. Police department, you get 5% less. Fire department, you get 5% less. Library, you get 5% less. Parks and Rec, 5% less. It's real easy. It works that easy.
Well, you can explain that to the unions that I'm sure that
I'm not suggesting anybody takes a cut and pay, Your Worship. I'm saying that there's your budget and there's what you're getting. Figure out how you're going to make that work. Every family in the community does that.
Okay.
But we don't.
Councillor Kip.
A statement was made about asset management being covered by the 1%, not even close. The 1% is about, I think, an eighth of what we require. I don't think the unions were asking the actual labor to cut 5%, but we're talking about possible purchasing, looking at different quality of materials, those type of things. I think everybody in the audience has cut 5 or 10% out of their income over the last years. And when the cost of livings are basing it around 1.5%, 2%, and we're constantly growing at 3 and 4 across the last 10 years. I go back, 7 if my accounting is right. And it's growing at a rate, and I think that's what these questions are getting at. It's growing at a rate that's not sustainable, and we eventually are going to have some, like San Jose, American City, 1 million people, 17 staff cut down to just doing water and sewer, folks. Parks aren't open. Things aren't open. I'm a little pessimistic. This is closing along. We're basing how good this is on a 300-person study. Wow.
Okay. So what are we down to about 3 minutes or so? And I think we had no further questions at this side.
There are quite a few remaining. We probably have time for one more.
Sure.
So the next and final question for this evening, can we tax industry and business more and reduce residential rates?
I believe this is the point we'll hear from the Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce, and they'll answer the question for you. No, I think, that is a challenge, and I think you've heard us, whoever asked the question, has heard us speak tonight about the fact that we are, as a council, committed to look at the commercial tax rate, and while we have been competitive with similar-sized communities in British Columbia on residential taxes, we may not be in commercial, and there's no question in my mind that needs to be looked at. And I think we've also mentioned earlier tonight that as part of our strategic plan, we are going to be going through these various categories, and certainly the taxation base will be looked at, and if there's a way to make some type of reduction. But I don't think it's realistic to believe that we're going to be able to reduce all levels of taxes across the board and still maintain the expenses that we have. Not surprisingly, the heavy industrial feels that they are still paying a little bit more than they feel they should. Commercials feeling they're paying more than they should. And I'm sure if we ask for a show of hands of people just here in the studio audience alone, if they feel that they're paying more taxes than they're comfortable with, all the hands would go up. So the balance that we're trying to do here is to provide the greatest amount of services we can at a price the taxpayer is comfortable with, and that's just not an easy job to do. I don't know if staff wants to have a final word, and maybe we can squeeze one more question in, but we want to start, if we can, right at 8:30, and I was looking for timing, but I have no signal here, so.
Your Worship?
Yeah, go ahead.
Will we be getting back to some of the people that haven't got answers tonight? Will we be trying to?
Mr. Cooper, how have you planned for that in the future?
The excess questions here, will we be getting back to some of the people who are posting some answers?
There are a number of trending opportunities here that where we can cobble together a common type question.
So Mr. Holmes can respond to that, Your Worship.
Your Worship, what we intend to do is document the questions that didn't get answered tonight and give them back to council in the form of an information report. We'll do our best job to answer those questions, and council, again, when they have that on the agenda, they can speak to that if they wanted to add anything further from council's perspective.
Okay, so we'll try to get all the questions done as we can, and that was a good point, Councillor Kipp, that, because, you know, a lot of time went into this thing. And I think really that does wind up the session, but I again want to thank everyone for taking part in this. I think it was a good exercise. As we mentioned earlier, I think this is the only municipality on Vancouver Island that has done it, and we're only probably the second one in British Columbia. And I also like to acknowledge and thank once again Councillor Anderson for whipping us into shape and getting this thing going. And
thank you, Mr. Chair, but I would like to say thank you to all of council who, if it wasn't for them voting in favor of the motion, we wouldn't be doing this tonight.
Sure. But also, in closing, I just want to thank our staff and the IT gang in particular, and Mr. Cooper and everyone on staff. There was a lot of work putting this together. It wasn't done overnight. And to everyone on the staff side as well, thank you very much for what I think was a job well done. And I hope there'll be an opportunity to repeat this in the near future. Not the next meeting, please. But I think if it was a success, which we all were hoping it would be, that there was an indication that that council would like to see this repeated, and I'm sure it will be. But that said, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Okay, I'll now ask for a motion to reconvene the regular meeting of council. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And we're going to move into introduction of late items. And Mr. Holmes, are you, or Mr.
Worship, Mr. Holmes is ready. Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Introduction of late items. Replace pages 56 to 62 of item 10F, staff report, South Downtown Waterfront Plan Project. Add delegation from Mr. Bob Wall to item 10G, Free Press Building, 223 Commercial Street, Heritage Facade Grant Approval. Replace pages 108 and 117 of item 12B, Nanaimo, Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association Business Improvement Area.
Okay, thank you. And now for the motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Second, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And move into the adoption as circulated. Moved. Second, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We'll just quickly run down item 8, Mayor's Report. I really just going to try to do this very, very quickly. Some of you may have noticed that I'm wearing a sports jersey. And we did have a bet, and that was Port Alberni, and the Bulldogs challenged us to wear the jersey and of the losing team. And I think my good friend, the mayor of Port Alberni, was quite convinced he was going to win. And so John Douglas Mayor Douglas challenged me to wear the Bulldogs that we lost. And so we started off, we won 2 games right off the bat, and I thought, cakewalk, we got him beat. And then unfortunately we lost all 3 of them. So he very kindly couriered down this jersey for me to wear. And with it he put a little note, and it says, "Dear John, wear it and weep. The fishing offer still stands. All the best, your dear friend John." And he attached several pieces of Kleenex in case there was any concern on my part. However, we honored the bet, and we're wearing the Bulldogs. And I might just say that I'm feeling a little bit more comfort that tonight, I believe Councillor Beswick will be facing the Bulldogs. And so I feel a little bit comfortable in wearing it now that Councillor Beswick isn't with us. But we wish the Grizzlies well in their endeavors as well.
Your Worship?
Yes.
Might I? So how are the Alberni Bulldogs doing tonight?
I have no idea.
They're down 3-1 in the second period to the Victoria Grizzlies.
Thank you very much. I've been busy here. I'm working, you know. Isn't that what Johnny Carson used to say? I'm working. Anyway, the other thing which was good news, I think the mayor of Kamloops challenged us, Peter Milbar, and he was confident, and it was his initiative, to come to us and say, we're going to beat Nanaimo hands down on Earth Hour. And so it was his wager that if he lost, he would be wearing a Clippers jersey. I was a little bit suspect when I found out he actually played for the Clippers about 10 or 15 years ago, I guess it was. And he probably would like the opportunity to have a little prestige of wearing a Clippers jersey, understandably. But we won. And so I think the stats were there, and we were, I think, according to data from BC Hydro, residents of Harbour City reduced power by 5.3%, and I think Councillor Anderson told me they were around 2.2. How sad. Anyway, we will be carrying a Clippers jersey up to Kamloops for the mayor to wear. My suggestion was we send up the same size as he wore 15 years ago, and good luck to you. Anyway, very nice guy, a lot of fun, and I think it's a very, very important message, and that is we need to conserve. So, having said that, we'll go into item 10, Community Safety and Development, Safer Nanaimo Advisory Committee 2012 review, to be introduced by our Safer Nanaimo Chair, Councillor Fred Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Well, in the interest of time, I was just going to tell you that we have done this review for 2012. It's on pages 18 to 20. I would like to move that you receive the report for 2012, and if there's any questions, I'll be pleased to answer them.
Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Questions? I see none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Development permit DP 000824 4960 Songbird Place. The purpose is to obtain council authorization to issue a development permit for a 63-unit multiple family residential development, and the staff recommendation is that the motion follows. And so if somebody would like to move that. So moved. And moved and seconded for discussion. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Well, on Saturday afternoon, I drove out to the spot and had a good look, and I should have followed the advice of Mr. Krastel, the chair of the Design Advisory Panel, to bring a machete, because it was very difficult to get to. But when I got myself on the parking lot of the Grand Hotel, I had a good look. And I have two questions to staff. Number one is that can you make sure that I understand correctly that the building envelope of this proposal, including the parking, does not impede on the 15-meter riparian zone?
Mr. Tucker? Oh, sorry. Mr. Tucker, go ahead.
In other words, I know a retaining wall is planned to be at 7.5 meters, and I just want to make sure that that is the only thing that appears in the riparian area.
They're just checking, Your Worship.
Okay.
Sorry, Your Worship. The setback variance that's proposed is 15 meters. The proposed setback of 7.5 meters is the variance, and that's for the building face.
So the requirement is 15 meters, as you say, Councillor Padgett, and the proposed setback is 7.5, so it's a 7.5 meter variance.
That's the second
But that's not answering my question. I'm asking whether the building envelope or any of the parking are going to be within that shortened riparian area. I've been led to believe that it's only the retaining wall that will be at the 7.5.
Yes, the report from the qualified environmental professional was that the reduction would be to 7.5 for the retaining wall. A portion of the building would be within the 15 meters. If I'm reading the site plan, which is shown on page, let me just, I'm working with the new technology too here. Schedule C.
Page 26.
So
page 26.
Well, follow up, Your Worship, if I may.
Yes.
How much of the building will encroach on the riparian area then?
I believe it's the dotted line, which is shown on the site plan there.
Yeah. Well, see, that is different from the information that I received from the chair of the Design Advisory Panel, who is telling me that it's strictly the retaining wall.
No.
And if it is, I can live with it. If not, maybe not.
This line.
Your worship, the variance that's requested, I think Councillor Paggi, you're technically correct that it's the retaining wall that's in the 7.5 meters. But the biologist would have identified that a setback to 7.5 meters was okay. So the current proposal of the building is outside of that, but there's definitely the retaining wall, and there may be other landscape features within that 7.5 meters. But it appears from the schedule on page 26 that the entire building footprint is proposed outside.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. The invasive plants are going to be removed from that area? Is there going to be any domestic or any other plants planted in their stead?
Yes, the invasive species are to be removed, and there is a mitigation plan that is proposed for the site. So it would be to plant riparian species within that 7.5 meter area.
Okay, good, thank you. And it's all been approved by the province as well? They've
That's
accepted
correct. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to support this because it meets the criteria set out by the city and the province. I do look forward to the results of the review that we're doing on riparian setbacks, and I look forward to possibly having a system whereby where the qualified environmental professional broadens the scope of the environmental review. But because this meets the criteria, I will be supporting it today.
Okay, and I also will be supporting it. It addresses one of the council's issues of the need for densification, and I think that number of units will certainly help in that regard. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We're going to move into zoning application RA 309 at 1844 Meredith Road. And the purpose is to present an application to rezone the property located at 1844 Meredith Road to permit a 3-lot subdivision. Moved. Seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And moving into the bylaw connected, the staff recommendation that, the bylaw is that zoning amendment bylaw 2013 number 4500.037 RA 309 to rezone 1844 Meredith Road from single dwelling residential to single dwelling, from single dwelling residential to single dwelling residential small lot. Pass first reading. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
13, number 4500, pass second reading.
Okay, moved, second. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Nanaimo Food Strategy. The purpose is to provide an update on the status of the Nanaimo Food Strategy process, and there is a suggested motion on that. Okay, is there a seconder? Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion. Councillor Paggi.
Thank you, Worship. Just to comment, I attended this workshop, and it was absolutely fabulous done, and it was really exciting to spend considerable time there. At some point, somebody asked me, why is the city in the business of food security? But it is part of our official community plan, and I think it's a very appropriate thing for us to be involved in. And I consider it a great success. Thank you.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into E, age-friendly communities funding, the isolated newly arrived seniors research, and the purpose is to summarize the finding of a study to determine barriers to social integration experienced by seniors new to Nanaimo and within the last 5 years.
Move to receive.
Move to receive. Second. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into the South Downtown Waterfront Plan Project, and the purpose is to obtain council direction on initiating a concept planning process for the South Downtown Waterfront area, and I think people should probably better understand that as the Wilcox Rail Yard, or portion of. Moved and seconded. Noted. Discussion. Councillor Paggi.
I think it would be appropriate, Your Worship, for staff, maybe Mr. Tucker, to explain in broad strokes what the intent is of this. This is, several phases, and I would like, if he can, for him to give some particular emphasis on when the public really gets involved and gets asked for the opinion as to how this should go.
Okay, and Mr. Tucker, just before you start, if you want to incorporate in your answer, or else if staff could be ready, and because I'd like to ask following this, if I could get a list of those different groups and entities that are identified as being to put on the committee, in the future. Mr. Tucker?
Actually, Your Worship, that was where I was going to start my answer, with the list of those who are on
please go ahead.
Committee. This will be led by an advisory committee, a steering committee, which we will invite participation from the Snuneymuxw First Nation, the Nanaimo Port Authority, the Regional District of Nanaimo, the Downtown Business Improvement Association, the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation, the South End Community Association, the chair of the Nanaimo Advisory Planning Committee, Vancouver Island University, and 2 community at large representatives. So the committee includes both the South End Community Association and 2 community at large representatives on the actual advisory committee. This is the Wellcox Yard, and also includes the Assembly Wharf areas and the waters adjoining. It was identified as part of our downtown plan over a decade ago as a future study area. It was also identified in the OCP as one of the areas that we would need to do of further planning work on in the near future. The idea is to initially work with this steering committee to form what they want to see come out of the planning process. Because we have community partners, this is about a collaborative planning process. And once that committee has given direction to how the planning process is to move forward, we would likely go to the public with those details, and then follow up certainly in the fall with a design charrette is the main event of this planning process, to develop a high-level concept plan. So there's participation on the advisory committee, and plus once the group is formed, we expect them to specify the locations and the times when public participation would be involved as well.
Thank you.
Okay, just for clarification, I think, Mr. Tucker, you referred to the Assembly Lands, or Assembly Lands and Wharf. That, I don't believe, is...
That's under the authority of the Nanaimo Port Authority.
Yes.
And is the adjoining lands on the east side. In other words...
No, I appreciate that. I misunderstood. I thought I heard you say, when you listed off all the different entities and groups, and I thought you included something about Assembly, and I was just going to say that's still Port Authority, but maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah, certainly it is, and we see, as I say, the Nanaimo Port Authority, the Snuneymuxw First Nation, and Regional District of Nanaimo as our key partners in this planning process.
Well, it represents about 27 acres, and really it's pretty exciting water lot area and land, and we're looking at having the RDN bus exchange there too. And I'm very, very pleased. I know that a lot of the players, South End Residents Association and Snuneymuxw in particular, were very anxious to be a part of it, and they certainly will be. And I think as this unfolds, we're going to get a lot of some really good input and get some really good cross-section of community representation involved in it. Thank you.
So, Your Worship, I'd like to just add that you're correct, though, that we would like to include the Assembly Wharf areas that are under the jurisdiction of the Port Authority, and we'd really like to engage them and the community on the planning for the entire area, including the Wellcox Yard, because we think that would be a very far-sightful thing to do to try and plan those areas in their entirety together. So we're hoping to have the cooperation of the Port Authority and move forward.
Plus, it would be a consistent plan if it covered all of the areas too. I appreciate that. Councillor Johnstone.
Just a quick one through you to staff, Your Worship. A detailed master plan of this nature with so many of our community partners involved, is year-end a realistic deadline or target date?
Through the chair to Councillor Johnstone, the intent here and the language that we've used here is as a concept plan. This will be the, if you will, the 30,000-foot view of potential land uses in the area. I wouldn't describe it as a detailed master plan. We don't have the time, and it's too early in the planning process to get to that level of detail. So this will likely result in very broad brush policies about future land uses in the area, and that will then guide subsequent planning phases.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering how one goes about including experts in the field. I was so impressed when I went to the Sustainable Cities Conference in Windsor, Ontario a few weeks back with a group called the 8 to 80 Cities. And they talk about, just to give you an idea who they are, 8 to 80 Cities is a Canadian non-profit organization dedicated to transforming cities into places where people can walk, bike, access public transit, and visit vibrant parks, streets, and other public places. And we've got an opportunity here with this addition of this 25 acres that we'll own and the other lands adjacent to it to make them really exciting people places. I'd really like to see us include a conversation with them and our other stakeholders to really make this the jewel in our crown.
Okay. I see no further questions. It's been moved and seconded. He says. Okay. So all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving down into item G, the Free Press Building at 223 Commercial Street. Heritage Facade Grant Approval, and the purpose is to obtain council approval for a Heritage Facade Grant application for the Free Press Building at 223 Commercial Street. In that regard, we do have a delegation, and first we'll hear Mr. Bob Wall. Mr. Wall, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship and councillors, for giving us 10 minutes on such a busy evening. This has been the biggest learning experience I've had in over 40 years in construction, being involved in this project. I've had the good fortune to build or renovate or add on to over 700 buildings within the city limits. And this has been the biggest learning experience because never before have I attempted to renew a building that was built back in the 1800s and is on the city heritage roll. And I had no idea how far the domino effect goes in what happens to the cost as you go about a project like this. I started out with a contract to do some renovations for Mr. Carey, my client, for $300,000 and change. Don't laugh, Morgan. I know we're at $2 million, Morgan, and I'm amazed that he still has the commitment to see this through and to do it as a proper historical heritage building renewal. A lot of you know the building. It had an art gallery in one side and a jewelry shop in the other, and 2 stories. And if you've been here long enough, you'd remember that in the 1950s, before that, it had 3 stories before a fire, and A&B Construction just took the top story off, and the proposal is to put it back as a 3-story building meeting all of the historical guidelines and so on. You've talked tonight some about downloading and how the city ends up spending money because other levels of government and so on tell you to do things. It's been very interesting because that's been our experience, because a lot of the difference between 332,000 or whatever it was and 2 million is the things that as we go along we find out that are requirements by the city that we were told at the start we wouldn't need. The initial, and some by people working for the city, some by equivalency engineers. The long list of engineers and the design team that's been hired for this project told us we wouldn't need. They said we wouldn't need to sprinkler the building if it stayed 2 stories. And but when we worked our way through it with city staff, it does have to be, and that engineer gave us incorrect information. Well, that doesn't just mean sprinklering the building, that means digging up the city streets because the service into the building isn't big enough for a sprinkler system. So we'll be taking up the sidewalks, digging up the streets, and putting in a big enough service. We're told originally we had to meet the seismic requirements or the new structural requirements 60% on a project like this, but eventually it was made clear we had to meet them by 100% or make it the equivalent of a new building. Once we opened up the floors and got underneath to see what the foundations looked like, we found there were no foundations. That means we'll take all the floors out, we'll build a new foundation all the way around the inside of the building and attach the building to it, and then put our structural work on top of that right up to the roof and our hold down anchors and the rest of the seismic system tying the roof down to a new foundation. I could go on at length, but we have 10 minutes, and I really appreciate Mr. Carey, and I asked him if he'd come to and say, why is he so committed to this? Because most of my clients would have said goodbye a long time ago. He has more employees than I do. He's a big employer in the city and wants to make this commitment to the downtown and wants to bring his employees to the downtown and bring it back to life. Just as I've heard some of your answers to the public this evening about different grants you've applied for different projects like the bike paths and different things like that, the reason you normally only see this sort of thing done by a not-for-profit is because without fundraising and a lot of donations, it doesn't make financial sense. The business model doesn't make sense. It takes so long to pay for the building before you ever get a return on it. Unless you're doing it for your children, it's not worth doing. And I'm probably more than halfway through the 10 minutes, so I'm going to also ask the person who's bought the building and wants to renew it, not do a patch job or a bit of a renovation, but it'll look like a new building, but it'll look very much like it looked in 1882 or whenever one of the first newspapers in this province built it here. Morgan.
Thank you very much, Bob. Yes, hello, my name is Morgan Carey. I do own Carey Real Estate Holdings, the company that does the legal entity that owns the building at 223 Commercial. I would like to speak a little bit, Bob used the word commitment. When we left, I'll backtrack a bit. I own a software company. We've been wildly successful. We're near 60 employees. Average salary is around $60,000 a year. So do the math, it's nearly $4 million in terms of economic activity just in payroll. We were in Treacy Place. We loved it. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the building. It's beautiful. And we actually lost a bid to purchase it and ended up moving. So at the time, I needed to move my 40-some-odd staff. I bought 210 4th Street. It was the biggest building that was available at the time that suited my needs. I spent more in renovations in terms of doing it right than I spent on the building itself because the value to my staff in terms of the quality, the ability for us to bring new staff here so that we don't have to leave Nanaimo is really, it's incalculable. And if you visit any of my construction projects, you'll see everything is high end. Everything, it just matters. It matters to me, it matters to the quality of staff and my ability to attract people here. So as we were growing, we outgrew that facility very quickly. So I started looking for a new facility, and at 10,000 square feet, which is double the size we have now, the size of 223 Commercial Street still wasn't sufficient. So we started talking from an architectural perspective as to what we could do to accommodate our needs and also not create a dead zone in downtown Commercial Street. I understand the viability of walking streets, needs to be maintained, and you don't want to have offices on the first floor. So I asked, is there a way for us to, build additional stories on these buildings so that we can accommodate our growth and still not basically kill a corner block? Turns out it was a 3-story building to begin with, and I fell in love with the idea of renovating it. And as Bob mentioned, it's been a real process for us. In the beginning, I was really excited. And we have all these fantastic drawings. I believe you may have all seen them. My staff are very excited, and my children are very excited, and my peers are very excited. And so it's a project I did commit to. Along the way, though, it's been well over a year since the purchase, and because of all these unforeseen things, we've had to purchase another building. I purchased, 324 Terminal Avenue. I believe it's beside your building, Mr. Mayor. We now have an additional 9,000 square feet, and I spent over $1 million in terms of renovation and purchase of that building. That's not a step I anticipated. And I needed to grow. I needed to give my staff the space. I needed to give them a break because the amount of work we have, I can bring another 50 people on staff as soon as I launch this building. However, with the purchase of that building, it's caused quite a financial strain, and with the timeline that's gone on, it's become very frustrating to try to get this project moving. But I really want to make it happen. So I thought I'd come down today, introduce myself, introduce my company, talk a little bit about the economics of what we mean to downtown and our future. Currently, we're somewhere in the $7 million revenue range, and all of that revenue comes from external sources. So for any of you who have any economic background, you'll understand the value of that base model in terms of economic multipliers. And so I'm going to use 5 for easy math. That's about $35 million a year in economic activity. That's just for this year. I'm working with the Business Development Bank of Canada now that we finally have space and we're able to grow. Our plan is to go to $70 million in 5 years in annual revenue. So that is a simple $350 million. I'd like to keep that company here. I'd like to be able to attract the staff that I need. I'd like to make it a vibrant tech community. The people we are able to bring here, they love it. It's beautiful, it's fantastic. We all know how great our city is. But when I'm under the bridge and unfortunately, I don't have the parking available. I'm happy to buy, build, and revitalize as many parking lots as I need, as many buildings as I need. None of that matters. But I can't promise my staff 6 months from now you'll have new facilities and have a year and a half go by and haven't even broken ground. Because that's the kind of thing that will cost me my reputation and quality staff that already work for me. They're not able to see the end in sight. And I'm starting to feel like I'm not being able to see the end in sight at all with the city as well. And so this is really my last attempt to convince myself that I can work with the city and that you are receptive to economic growth in downtown Nanaimo, and you really want us down there helping revitalize the city of Nanaimo. So if you have any questions.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Patchy, did you have a question?
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Wall, Mr. Kelly. We're talking heritage facade approval here. When I look at this picture, the third floor is somewhat of concern to me. On what plans are you basing to bring this back to the original pre-1930 state? There was a fire in 1930, I believe.
As I understand,
you have the plans to do that?
Yes, of course. But as I understand it, there is a covenant in the city rules that state that there does need to have a significant difference between anything that's considered new construction versus anything that's considered revitalized. So basically, the first 2 stories need to be in the architectural style that exists with the brick framework and whatnot. And then you do need to have not only a setback, but also a slightly visibly identifiable architectural style for the new addition. However, in working with the city, we looked at old pictures and we looked at the crown details and things of that nature, and they actually made recommendations and requests for us to make changes to the arcs, to the various facade elements and whatnot. So we are working based on what we understand is the architectural requirements for adding new space, but as well working to try to restore a look and feel that was representative of the pictures. And of course, there's not very many photographical records and things of that nature.
Thank you for the effort. It's great.
Yeah, great. I think it's a great effort, and I'm certainly appreciative, but we do have some more questions yet. Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know Mr. Wall, and it's the first time I met you, Mr. Carey, and I got to tell you, you're both class acts. The fact is that when somebody says that they have faith in our community and they want to invest in our community, that says a lot, and I really, really appreciate you doing so. That's a difficult project. Oh my God, it's an old building. I don't have to tell you how difficult it is. And thank you for persevering. We keep talking about, I talk about this people thing, about getting people into places as opposed to buildings and cars and so on and so forth. Imagine, well, I mean, just up at the old train station. You know, if you went up there about a year ago when things were progressing, but there was still chain link fence around it, it was dead up there. There was nothing going on. People went into their homes in the evening. There was nothing happening. You go up there now on a Tuesday or Wednesday night even, and the pub, restaurant, the Irish pub restaurant, the street is alive. The building is alive. And it's amazing to watch. And I believe the same thing's going to happen every time you bring 40 or 50 or 60 or 100 new people downtown that are living, working, playing, eating, buying. It's going to add to our vibrancy. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you for your perseverance on this one. I think it's going to be amazing for downtown. I can't imagine what the economic impact is going to be. The restaurants are going to be full, the parkades. It's an amazing project, and thank you for your endurance. One question, probably through you to Mr. Wall, if I may, Your Worship. There was a comment made by the Heritage Commission about the overall heritage value not being as high as others on the register. Can you comment to me about that?
I don't understand that myself, but all of the buildings on the register have been given a value of, an order of value as seen by that committee.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay. Done. Councillor Brennan.
Well, I can't specifically answer that, but I can say that there is a method that's used by our heritage planner who reviews the building and certain values and criteria and scores it. So some come out higher than others, but so long as they meet the threshold, then they've met the threshold. And we considered this and we supported it.
Great. I just might add, I see no further questions on it. Mr. Gary, I wish you well. I know I went through a renovation at one point, and it's always a frightening work in order. You just don't really know what you're going to uncover. It's like opening a grave. And anyway, I think it would be a wonderful asset for downtown, and I think it's in a great strategic location, and you certainly have a capable builder that's working with you on it. So I think all in all, I'm looking forward to the finished product, and thank you for your presentation. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And the motion, just for the benefit of those that didn't see it, is to approve a $10,000 heritage facade grant to the exterior rehabilitation of the Free Press building at 223 Commercial Street, subject to the conditions specified in the report. Thank you, gentlemen. And then we're going to move into the second phase now, and that's the item H. Did you want to add something?
Remain, it's the same building, but.
No, well, and that's just questions.
If you have any questions?
Don't go too far away, just in case. But you can have a seat, and then we'll.
If I may, I'd like to make
Sure.
just a comment on the heritage significance. I believe the significance and the score that was appropriated to this particular building was based on the rebuild, because we did go through some identification of what the actual building was classified as in terms of its architectural style and whatnot. And it was classified in the 1950s as that sort of postmodern, ugly yellow square building. And I think that's probably, I think if it was considered to be a beautiful brick facade, 1850s style building, it would have been scored quite significantly higher. So it was being considered as is.
I agree. Good point.
Thank you.
Okay, so you can we'll move on to the next one, and that's going to be item H, and it's a Free Press building again at 223 Commercial Street, heritage tax exemption application, and the purpose is to obtain council approval in principle for a 10-year heritage tax exemption application for the Free Press building at 223 Commercial Street. Move. And second, comments, Councillor Patchy.
Quick question to staff. What does the in principle portion mean?
The heritage tax exemption would not kick in until the project is completed. For instance, council just recently had the report on the ENN railway station, although it was approved in principle 2 years prior. So it's when the project is completed is when it would kick in.
Okay. Councillor Brennan.
Just speaking to the motion, speaking in favor of it, I think so many times we've being criticized as a city for not valuing our heritage to the degree that other cities do, and quite often Victoria is used as the example. You know, why can't you be more like Victoria? And Victoria has managed to maintain their heritage value primarily through these kinds of encouragements. So this is how we can be. We can value our heritage as much as other cities that have been picked out in the province. So I think this is a really good plan, and I wholeheartedly support this.
Well, thank you for that, and I totally agree. And in fact, I commend the applicant, because I think, you know, if we allow these things to get to the point where restoration is so exhaustive, and I would suggest where the delegation is, I've lost them now, but they must be reasonably close to that point now. But that said, you know, I admire and respect the energy and the financial commitment involved, because if you're going to do something that's important to do it right. And I think if you're going to make that kind of a financial undertaking, I'm looking forward to seeing the finished product, because I think it'll be an outstanding asset for the downtown. So I see no further questions on this thing. The motion on is there that we provide the approval in principle for 10 years. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Move into item I, approval of the disposition of a 60-year lease to the Columbian Center Society, Haven Society, and the Nanaimo Affordable Housing Society for city-owned lands located at 1597 Boundary Crescent. Moved. Second. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We're going to approve in principle, obviously, and that's to authorize staff to publish a notice of disposition as required under Section 24 and 26 of Unity Charter, and that was included in the motion, just for clarification. So we're going into item J, and that is the award of request for a proposal of 1379, for proposal 1379 to provide off-street parking equipment, maintenance, and consumables. And the purpose is to obtain council approval to award RFP 1379 to supply services which are ancillary to those the city will provide when parking enforcement is brought in-house. Move the recommendation. Second. Discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We're moving into unresolved building deficiencies. Notice on title, section 5.7. It's required that council hear anyone with, wishing to speak with respect to unresolved building deficiencies at 690 St. Andrew Street. Is up. Come down, ma'am. We just need your name, address, and your affiliation with the property, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, council members and city staff and members of the audience. I have prepared some copies for council members.
Okay. Staff will grab it from you there.
For the council members?
Well, we probably won't have time to read them right now is the problem in the middle of a meeting, but
okay. Okay, my name is Deanna Whiteside. I am the new homeowner and resident of 690 St. Andrew Street. I'm here tonight because of the confusion and the stress that this entire matter has caused me. Approximately a year ago, I was in the process of closing the deal on a cute little 1940s character home. This home symbolized more than a roof over my head. It symbolized a chance for peace in my life. It was a chance to enjoy a garden, a neighborhood, and the opportunity for a healthier life for myself and for my kids. If you'd asked me a year ago if I'd be standing here with a file folder full of documents from the city that basically make me feel like a criminal and like I've done something wrong, I would have laughed. The wording in these documents, illegal, contravention, notice to be registered on the title, inform others, and your mortgage lender, even standing here tonight feels very demeaning. The first thing that I want you guys to look at, council members, is the real estate listing. And I've highlighted that the very first line in the realtor write-up mentions that the house has a 2-bedroom mortgage helper suite. At no time during the process of purchasing this home was a buyer beware notification given to me. I did not illegally construct this suite. I truly felt that I was simply purchasing a little old house in a great neighborhood that would give me a fresh start to my new life. Again, at no time during the stress and excitement of buying this 1940s home did I feel a sense of deception or that something illegal was within it. I have 7.5 years of university education to teach children. I coach, I volunteer a lot of time. Admittedly, I am not well versed in building codes. I don't know the language surrounding rental suites. This is all new to me, so like Mr. Wall mentioned, I've learned a lot in the last 3 months. The second page of the documents that I provided are the result of a home inspection that the city conducted at my home on the 23rd of January. This document was received in the mail about 2.5 weeks after their first and only inspection of my property. It highlights 2 areas of deficiencies within the suite. These deficiencies gave me a little bit of hope, and I began to feel a little bit stressed about the process ahead of me. The deficiencies seemed doable, they seemed affordable, manageable, so I carried on with the process. It also informed me, as I've highlighted there as well, that it didn't represent a complete list of further issues that may be discovered, but that complete list, but it said that it discovered at future inspections. I just want to make it very clear that there have been no further inspections at my home other than the one on the 23rd of January. So I began the process of researching draftsmen and hiring somebody to come into my home, measure every room, locate fire separations, fire alarms. This cost was hundreds of dollars, which maybe for some people here isn't a lot, but for me, on a single income, fixed is quite a bit of money. I sent several emails and left phone messages for the person who, the city staff member on that second letter there. My messages were never returned. So I went ahead, because there was a date that I had to qualify for in order to get my application in, and I went to the counter at the city building inspection, and I felt like I was sort of half-helped. I was left alone at the counter to fill in my application form, and then I just handed it in to a second person that came to help me. And I went on my way, just thinking that I would receive a phone call or an email or something to let me know when my building permit was ready. So if you turn to the very last page, this is where it got ugly, for me anyways, and this is where I feel that there's some contradictions. The initial deficiencies that were given to me based upon the one and only inspection of the suite were probably in around the range of about $5,000. But this last page, the price rose probably about $25,000 to $30,000, which I cannot afford. So I'm just very confused by this whole process, because to me, if the city came in and initially inspected my suite and then gave me a list with 2 areas of deficiencies, and now all of a sudden I get another list 2 months later with 6 more deficiencies on it, that raises the cost of $25,000 to upgrade my home, my 1940s home, it just doesn't make sense. So there is a beam that runs through my house. It's a major support beam, and it measures 6 feet 2 inches from the floor to the highest point on that beam. And they want me to remove that beam, which is a major engineering feat. So, and I asked why, and I was told by a city staff member that the reason why was that in the event of a fire, somebody might bump their head on it. So I understand that safety is a major concern. I am willing to do anything it would take to get that house up to the fire codes and put in the proper windows for egress and fire doors and all those things. But to ask somebody to take out a major support beam in a 1940s home, it just seems, I don't know, like I think a house built in the 1940s, I don't know any way it would meet the building codes of today without, I don't know, without a lot of money, which, you know, anyways. Again, I'm just very confused by this whole process and as to why all of a sudden a new list of requirements and deficiencies was given to me 2 months after their inspection report. And then if you look at the report that was given to you tonight by the City of Nanaimo, it says that in order to authorize the suite, a notice is required to be registered on the title. And the city informed me in order to retain the suite, a building permit application was required. So why in that same letter did they not tell me that in order for the suite to be authorized, that this process needed to happen too? And I just, again, I feel left in the dark. I feel like I really need for somebody to let me know what exactly is going on here and why, as a brand new homeowner, why I'm being faced to pay the penalty for somebody else's like negligence, I guess, in building this suite in a home that I've just acquired. So my question is this not a democratic society? Do I not have some choices? I did not contravene the bylaw. I was not the person responsible for the illegal construction. I'm willing to do whatever it takes within my financial means to rectify the situation, to make the suite safe. But I don't think putting a notice on the title of my property is the answer. I think that it's just negative. There's negative repercussions for it, for me, for my investment. If I have to sell the home because I can no longer have the suite, if there's a title or a bylaw contravention notice on the title of the property, it's going to bring the value of the property down. One contractor that came in to give me a quote said to me, well, maybe you're better off just to turn it back into a 5-bedroom home. And, why can't I be given that choice before whatever's happening here tonight happens? That's my question to all of you.
Okay. Is there a staff comment on this before there's some questions here from council, but I'd like to get the staff opinion here at this stage. Go ahead.
I'll start, and if Mr. Lindsay wants to add anything afterwards, he can chime in as well. It is an unfortunate situation. As you know, there's thousands and thousands of suites that were constructed without permits within the city, and we work through them based on complaints and the user rates that we have to identify where they are. So this is one such suite where it's come up, and we're working with the issues. And of course, the first thing we do is we put a notice on title to protect the taxpayers from liability. And that's key for any construction that's done without a permit, whether it's a suite or not a suite. When it's done without a permit, and we've identified it, we have to protect the taxpayers in the event of something happening that puts them at risk. So even if this is decommissioned as a suite, it's still construction in terms of the electrical and everything behind the walls that we can't see that was done without a permit, that we would want to protect the taxpayers. With regard to the change in what we saw, it's a little bit like what Mr. Wall talked about, that we don't know what is behind the walls, so we have an inspector look at it, and we give our best estimate of what the issues are that they have to deal with, which is life safety issues such as exiting, fire separations between the two units, and interconnected smoke detectors. Those are the basic life safety issues. But we can't identify everything until they hire a designer to come up with a plan that conforms with the zoning bylaw, conforms with the building code. At the time that they submit that permit, we review it. That designer that's hired identifies issues, we review it. We might see other issues that have to be addressed. And that's why there's a difference. We're not able the first time through to actually identify everything. And in fact, that's where we got into trouble before, was trying to identify everything, and the homeowners would get frustrated. But if we don't go in at all, we can't give them an order of magnitude. And I agree that this case identifies one that's quite a difference, from $5,000 to $40,000 or $50,000. That's a large cost swing, and I don't know the details of it, and Mr. Lindsay might, that the designer has identified. But that's where that comes from. So the choice that the owner has at this point is to proceed, of course, to authorize the suite by dealing with the safety issues, or to decommission the suite and just have it as a 5-bedroom single-family house. But staff would never recommend that we do not proceed with the Section 57 notice, because that's required regardless of what happens, because we have no idea how the construction occurred in the first place.
Okay, I'm just kind of curious about the need to remove this beam that the applicant mentioned.
Yes, Your Worship. So the beam issue, and Mr. Lindsay may have more information, but of course the code requires that all ceilings be at a certain height. And if you can imagine a beam that's not at a height that a person can exit in the middle of the night, startled by a fire. I have personal friends who have knocked themselves out in this situation, and that's what that's about. Now, it becomes a little bit, I'm sure, frustrating for the homeowner, saying, well, if I convert this back to just a 5-bedroom, single-family home, are you going to make me take the beam out? And the answer is no. But that's where it gets a little confusing, because when there's a separate single-family or suite in the house, there's no control over the occupants of the house, and we make them upgrade all the safety issues. But if it remains as an unauthorized construction in a single-family house, it remains with the Section 57 notice on it.
Well, I mean, is there, the applicant obviously has some challenges, and is there a lesser financial obligation that will resolve the issues, or is this all or nothing?
So, Your Worship, one further thing on the beam, and I don't know the answer to this, because if the beam is in an area of the suite that doesn't impede a person exiting the building in a safe fashion, there may be an opportunity to leave it. So if you can imagine there's bedrooms at one end and there's a beam that runs across and the exit's over here, that's a problem. But if the beam's running this way and they can still get through the building, there may be an opportunity to keep it. And that's something that we would look at with the designer. But in terms of what they have to do, it's all or nothing in terms of the life safety issues that I mentioned for exiting, fire separation, and interconnected smoke detection.
Okay. We've got some questions. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to sort of comment that in your first remarks you said that this was the listing and there was no buyer beware for you. Well, that's what a Section 57 is. And had this suite been reviewed by the city prior to you buying it, you would have got a buyer beware. That's what it is. It alerts subsequent buyers that this is unauthorized. That's why it's always really disturbing to see in a listing like this, delightful 3-bedroom home with a 2-bedroom mortgage helper. What could be better? Well, what could be better would be one that was actually done legally. That could be much better. And I'm always really distressed when I see that a listing that says this, because it certainly feels misleading, and I'm sure that's how you felt. But you wouldn't be misleading anyone if there was a Section 57 on your title, because that would alert the next buyer down the road. I think you said, why can't I just convert it and just be done with this? And I think the staff said you can. Just do away with renting it. Now, I'm assuming you have renters in here now?
I have one lady.
Yeah, so you have tenants in there. It's been identified that it's not as safe as the law requires it to be. So there's all sorts of liability, I suppose, arising out of that. So I'm sure you want to be quite alert to that. And the alternative being that you decommission it is there. But if you're going to keep it, then everybody concerned, I think, has an obligation to ensure safety for everybody, you and your tenant.
Absolutely.
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm quite sure the reason you bought the house as a single parent was the fact that you could gain some revenue from the suite, and very wise choice, purchase.
At the time.
And through you to staff, Your Worship, does Vancouver Island Real Estate Board not bear any responsibility for advertising a home with a legal suite, or with a suite? They don't say it's legal, but it's a mortgage helper suite. Do we not discuss with Vancouver Island Real Estate Board the possible legalities, or are there legalities over this? This is false advertising.
Your Worship, we certainly work quite closely with the local real estate firms. We make several presentations to them about this issue over the years, and we will continue to do so. Of course, the issue is what, in addition to the listing, how it was portrayed in terms of the disclosure statement that the owner would have had to review as part of the application, and the due diligence leading up to the purchase of the property. But I'm sure that that the owner has some issues with how it was portrayed, and the owner should pursue that with the real estate firm. And we do continue as staff working with the real estate board.
You see more and more in the advertisements that it says unauthorized suite, which is a more accurate description and used quite frequently now.
Thank you, Your Worship. Maybe my advice to you then is to talk to your realtor, and if they have a conscience, they might be able to help you or you know, in some way. We purchased a house in Nanaimo when we first moved here with a fire, wood stove fire, and when the people that bought it went to get their home insurance, they found it wasn't up to code. But that, we lived in the home for 10 years with that fireplace the way it was, not knowing it was a fire hazard. And when we spoke to our realtor, he was very, very good about making compensation to us, and he paid the difference in making that fireplace up to code for the new owners. So might be worth your try.
Okay, Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Worship. So I'm trying to understand this a little bit further. The Section 57 would go on this is to staff, the Section 57 would go on to the property regardless of the suite or not suite. It's the repairs that were done to it without permit?
title.
Your Worship, the policy and what staff recommends is that any time it's known that there's been construction without a building permit, we have no way of verifying how it was done and whether it complied with the building code. The suite is, of course, part of this issue, but the fact that there was construction done to renovate a basement or wherever the suite is without a permit, we can't guarantee that it was constructed to code. So you put the Section 57 notice on title. In extreme cases, we've had applicants request, if we removed all the drywall and exposed everything behind the walls so that you can see it, can we get a building permit? And that can be done, but it's very costly and sometimes not able to be done because foundations and footings we can't obviously access all the time.
Supplementary, Your Worship. This just keeps getting better and better. So what can we do for this lady? What can we do? I mean, she doesn't know what to go this way, go that way. What can we do?
So, Your Worship, I think everybody is appreciative that this is not a desirable situation. Council has faced this hundreds and hundreds of times, and in the end is invariably convinced that it's in Council's responsibility to the community and to the taxpayers to put this Section 57 on so this doesn't happen to the next person. So that's our strong advice, and Council has followed that virtually all the time, because it would be an even worse disaster to have something bad happen and have all the taxpayers have to be liable. So it's an unfortunate situation. Everybody feels badly about it, but it's happened hundreds and even thousands of times.
Can I just add one thing too? That third document that I've handed out with the 6 items of deficiencies, I know it was pointed out just tonight that those were discovered based upon the designer plans, but the need for a site plan, that didn't have anything to do with the designer plans. The ceiling heights had nothing to do with the designer. Those were based upon the initial inspection done in January that wasn't disclosed to me in the February list of deficiencies. So there may be a few things on that list that were discovered by the designer, but I don't feel that the full situation was disclosed to me in the February post-inspection report. And I just really do want to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay, well, you know, this is going to be a huge challenge because, but this is a fairly recent acquisition, is it not? And so, you know, we're not able to dispense, and nor do we intend to, any kind of legal advice. But I really think if it's this new, as it appears to me to be, you may, and I think you should talk to the real estate company, because there is an area here that is certainly gray, and you've been put in the position based on the information you received, in my opinion, and I'm not questioning anyone, but the result of what has been printed here and underlined by you indicates that you were not made aware, presumably, it appears you have not been made aware of some of the liability connected with this property, and that's a tough thing. You know, I mean, I know the city and I know all of council wants to do what we can do to help in any way, because this is a really unfortunate situation that you're in. But I might suggest that you communicate with the company and see what comments they may want to make regarding the fact that you weren't really completely made aware of it. And I think the city staff earlier alluded to the fact that a lot of them are posting these as non-conforming or making some other reference that it's not legal, a legal suite. And to me, it doesn't appear that disclaimer has been put there. And I think you bought that in good faith. I'm not making any legal opinion. I'm not making any recommendation. But I think there might be an opportunity to talk to the company and see what resources they may or may not have available for you. But, you know, the registration on title is a tough one. And again, it's not so much to protect you, because the damage has been done, unfortunately. It's to protect the taxpayers of Nanaimo in the event that you should sell, and there's no reason, having gone through this, you'd want to subject anyone else to it. But the legal liability still remains with the city, and so this notice of motion is more or less an automatic thing that is done, again, because of liability reasons on it. I wish I could think of something else, and I wish, you know, the only thing I can suggest you is stay in touch with staff, and as circumstances change, and if there's any other concessions or issues that come along, I can assure you the staff will want to work with you on it in any way they can. But it's not an easy fix, and I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Your worship.
Yep.
I was going to ask a question to staff.
Yep.
I know it's
I thought you'd finished, because I think actually didn't Mr. Swaby answered all the options that were there. So
I was just wondering if one further, Your Worship, if we could have Mr. Lindsay or Mr. Swaby assign somebody to the young lady and see if we can come to some sort of resolve. When I say resolve, just help her through this process to its conclusion, whatever it might be that she decides on. I don't think she's believing she's getting the help that she needs to try and make some decisions moving forward. And, you know, I think whichever way she goes is not what she contemplated when she bought the house. So if we could just assign somebody to her over the next short future just to help her through that process to move ahead and come to some sort of conclusion.
Absolutely.
okay, thank you. So, move the recommendation. Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into the community services, 12A minutes of the Nanaimo Athletic Commission meeting held 2012 September 12th, to be introduced by the chair of the Nanaimo Athletic Commission, Councillor Kipp.
Yes, I'd like to move the receipt of the information of the minutes of the Athletic Commission.
Second motion.
Move in second. Okay.
To talk to them.
Yes, please.
This is an interesting meeting. We had the provincial government attend. It was during the time they were starting the Provincial Athletic Commission. Nanaimo's been running an athletic commission for over 25 to 30 years now. I've been going at it. And we had the Provincial Commission come up, and they've used some of our standards to create the new Combat Sport Commission. My only sort of part of it is they've had about an $800,000 budget. I think our budget's about $3,000, and they've been going at it a year as a province and still don't have a commission in place. So it's been a bit slow. But when that commission is formed, duly formed, we will have to actually close down our commission. Thank you.
Okay. Good. It's been moved and seconded.
I think we need, yes, it's been moved in second, just to vote now, Your Worship.
Sorry?
Just to vote now.
Yeah. So the
motion to receive the information.
Yeah, I thought you moved it earlier, did you? And seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association Business Improvement Area, and to obtain council approval. And I'm going to, at this point, absent myself on what I perceive to be a potential conflict of interest because I'm a property owner in the area. And so I will absent myself and turn it over to, oops, sorry, better say that to our acting mayor, Councillor Johnstone. Do you want to read it from there or take it from there? Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, the purpose is to obtain council approval to prepare draft bylaws for the renewal of the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association Business Improvement Area bylaws for an additional 5 years. The bylaws expire on 2013, June 30th. And we have delegations to speak to this issue. Mr. Cooper, John Cooper, and Ms. Hofstetter. Okay. Your name and address?
Yep. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is John Cooper. I'm a city-appointed board member of the DNBA and was elected to act as the president of the BIA after serving as vice president last year. Been a volunteer board member of the DNBA since its inception 4 years ago. This presentation is going to go over who we are, our mandate, our boundaries, quick profile of our members, rationale for Nanaimo's ongoing support of a vibrant downtown, recognizing that downtown Nanaimo is the arts, entertainment, and cultural hub of our city, and that a healthy and vibrant downtown is critically important if we are to be successful in establishing Nanaimo as a destination city in the increasingly competitive Vancouver Island tourism and business attraction landscape. The mandate on the screen here, I won't read it for you, but that was articulated by our board at our most recent strategic planning session. Our mandate as defined by our bylaws includes carrying out studies or reports respecting the revitalization and development of our improvement areas, improving, beautifying, and maintaining streets, sidewalks, municipally owned land and buildings and other structures within the BIA. Also conserving heritage property within the BIA. And most importantly, in encouraging business in the defined business improvement areas. The map on the screen shows our boundaries. These boundaries identify the areas in the closest proximity of the most populated commerce, arts, and culture areas of our downtown. Considerations in defining these boundaries included the visibility of the area to visitors, for example, high-profile sections like Nickel Street and Terminal Ave, as well as the long-term importance of defined growth areas outlined in the community and neighborhood plans, for example, sections southeast of Nickel Street towards the waterfront, the Wilcox Yard. These boundaries, in our opinion, still accurately reflect the service areas our organization is committed to serving. These areas represent the regions that stand to benefit most greatly from the activities of the BIA and represent areas that require comprehensive planning with respect to the implementation of the downtown plan. According to business statistic reports from our database, our borders of the BIA include 720 businesses and 382 properties, representing 4,340 employees within our city. The slide above you shows our organizational structure. I'll spend a little time on this slide. Our 12 board members are elected to help determine the priorities of the organization. All volunteers. These priorities are based on a combination of key elements of the downtown plan, member consultation, and known market trends. Our board consists of a broad cross-section of individuals representing several business sectors, including finance, media, hospitality, professional services, industry, real estate. These individuals are Vice President Warren Cook, Manager of London Drugs at the Port Place Mall, our Treasurer Louise Kello, a chartered accountant at MNP Accounting Firm on Wallace Street, our Secretary Blake McGuffey, city appointed and owner of Esplanade Tax Services, running businesses in Nanaimo since 1971. Thank you. And as you can appreciate, our unofficial historian. The rest of the board consists of Shauna McPhillips, a manager at Coastal Capital Credit Union in Anacrawl Plaza, Eric McLean, owner of McLean Specialty Foods on Fitzwilliam since 1992, Leslie Sutton, marketing manager for the Flying Fish, Judy Steffen, owner of Nanaimo Magazine, Jerry Hong, owner of the Queens and several other entertainment venues in the downtown, Linda Olson, longtime downtown property owner and business owner for over 33 years, Thomas Robert Shaw, longtime business owner and resident of downtown Nanaimo, and Ian Howitt, our non-voting ex officio director appointed by the city manager. These board members work in collaboration with our 4 full-time staff and in collaboration with our 4 committees organizing downtown projects and programs into the 4 pillars of healthy downtowns identified in the downtown plan. These committees are made up of volunteer members and community partners who help us choose projects and develop programs that fit within our mandate and established board priorities. Our Planning, Design, and Development Committee is chaired by Mr. Darren Moss of Tectonica, and I am the board rep on that committee. Other members include VIU VP Dave Whitty, Andre Sullivan, City Engineer Gordon Foy, Mike Delves, Greg Scott, and Rebecca Kirk, to name a few. Our Marketing Committee is chaired by Jim Turley of Turley's Florists and is represented by Judy Steffen as a board rep. Our Events Committee is chair and board rep is Shauna McPhillips. This committee has recently been restructured, now consists of 12 members, including professional event planners, event-based organization and stakeholders such as Kim Smythe of West Coast Communications, Denise Taken of the VICC, and Bruce Halliday of the Port Theatre. Our Safety and Security Committee is chair and board rep of Warren Cook and consists of downtown property owners that care deeply about our downtown and the experience visitors will have when they visit our downtown. Members of this committee include former board member Bill Carter, owner of Bastion Jewelers, as well as members of the RCMP and Bylaw Services. These 41 volunteers collectively contribute 102 volunteer hours each month and over 1,200 volunteer hours per year. Our other community volunteers in our subcommittees and other events contribute almost 1,000 volunteer hours per year. This dedicated group of staff and volunteers believe in the importance of the DNBIA and believe in the importance of a thriving downtown. They are involved for the benefit of all of Nanaimo. Next slide shows our funding. You'll see how it's distributed or how it comes into our organization. The enterprise income, just as a point of clarity, represents funding applied for and obtained by the DNBA. For example, we recently successfully applied for and qualified for a $217,000 brownfield grant study, which has been paid out in full. Moving forward, the DNBA is in position to apply for more of this type of supplementary funding. Next slide shows you our current operating budget and the percentage allocation of each of those items split up between marketing expenses, safety and security, event expenses, planning, development and design implementation, and administration and programming. Administration and programming costs make up the highest percentage as our full-time staff actually execute the workflow and objectives of the board and the committees. Many BIAs with less staffing resources than the DNBA would contract out work such as website programming, event programming, and accounting. This practice significantly increases the cost to the organization, paying high contract rates versus modest staff wage rates. Leveraging access to talented staff at wholesale rates leads to a significant increase in the return on investment of our static budget. Our commitment moving forward. You'll see the 9 priorities that were established at our last strategic planning session. These will evolve as we collect additional input from our members moving forward into our next term, but those are the most recent priorities identified by our board. Some of our accomplishments over the last 4 years, I'll go over it briefly. We only have 10 minutes. I don't have time to go over all of them, but some of them are identified here on this slide and slides to follow. Our co-op marketing strategy helps downtown business owners double their marketing dollars with negotiated bulk purchase discounts. We've made strides in our members' communications with our news flashes, city notes, quarterly coffee and business mixers, and ongoing mail-outs. In addition, as we grow and evolve, we are committed to finding ways for members to likewise communicate with us. We are encouraging our members to get together, tell us what they want, give us feedback through a variety of communication channels. More importantly, we've also begun a consultation process to develop a strategic plan with members, and this will include 25 stakeholder partner face-to-face interviews, 4 weeks of public opinion surveys publicized in local media, 3 weeks of an online survey of our membership, focus group sessions consisting of approximately 36 people, and open public meetings. Additional accomplishments outlined on the slide. I already mentioned our $217,000 provincial grant award for Terminal Avenue, Nichols Street Brownfield study. Annual production of 6 signature events and festivals outlined there. Those are our key events. Obviously, there's significantly more events that the DNBA works with in the downtown. These are events that we explicitly operate. Other accomplishments listed on the above slide Highlights include the parking awareness campaign, launch of our new vibrant and easy-to-navigate website, the Light Up Downtown tree lighting program, our litter reduction strategy, which include installing 20 new garbage cans in the downtown, some green transportation initiatives, which included 20 new bike racks in the downtown. Looking forward, there's 7 projects that we've identified. As mentioned, the DNBIA is undergoing a member consultation, which will become the basis of our new strategic plan moving forward. That being said, the committees have consulted with our stakeholders to date and have defined the projects listed on this slide as we wait for the outcome of the public consultation. Other projects not listed include working closer with the city's new parking and bylaw ambassadors to address perceptions surrounding downtown Nanaimo parking. Going forward, community partners. All of our accomplishment and projects looking forward are in consultation and with input from our community partners, and our success to date has been critically important in us collaborating with these community partners. And they include the City of Nanaimo, the NEDC, Tourism Nanaimo, the Chamber, Vancouver Island Conference Centre, the Port Authority, Innovation Island, Community Futures, VIU, and property management organizations and community partners such as the Old City Quarter Association and the newly emerging Merchant Group. We have a commitment to working with all of these organizations and groups in an effort to provide value to their business plans and to leverage resources in the best possible way. Our community partners have also invested in us. Most recently, in consultation with the DNBIA, CTV invested $40,000 in market research that they're donating to our organization to help us base our future decision-making on. The Nanaimo City Centre Association also invested $20,000 most recently to assist the DNBIA to conduct a professional and in-depth member public consultation, which I've described previously. Continuing the momentum, the downtown plan highlights the City of Nanaimo's commitment to a thriving downtown. The plan identifies that the BIA is the only organization appropriate to carry about the deliverables of the mandates outlined in its plan, and rightfully states that without a BIA, goals and objectives of the city's own downtown plan could not be successfully achieved. Our committed volunteers, stakeholders, and community partners are poised and ready to maintain the positive direction that downtown Nanaimo is currently headed in. Our consultation with members and public at large will give us direction needed to continue to build on the momentum that we've already created. Our request to council, at this time, we would like to request that council direct staff to begin writing the new bylaws to support the successful implementation of the downtown plan. Some of the specifics within our request to council include the retaining our existing boundaries, maintaining the operating conditions and limitations currently set out in our bylaw, nominal levy increases continued as outlined in our current bylaws, continue matching with the municipal grant, and look at some options to lower local service taxes for members potentially being unfairly taxed. And we have a few examples of that, and we want them to give consideration for multiple and contiguous owner-operated businesses, and explore the option of potentially decreasing the minimum parcel tax and increase to the assessed value cap. And at the end, there's questions if you had some questions about that. Recognizing that renewal years take our limited resources away from improving the downtown, it makes sense to increase the length of time between renewals. This maintains continuity and maximizes the city's return on downtown Nanaimo revitalization investments. So we're looking for the city to consider a 5 to 7 year term. At this time, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have to the best of my ability.
Does council have any questions of the delegation? Councillor Kipp?
Yeah, thank you. Good report, John. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
you said that the grant was paid in full for the trench project?
For the terminal nickel study, yes, it was.
What's the outcome of the study? Will we get to see it?
Sure. So as part of that study, we made a commitment to the landowners down there that they would be the first to be communicated the outcome of that report. We're in the process of organizing that group to get together and be there for the initial communication of the outcome of that report. Once that meeting's been completed and we've got the support of the landowners down there, then we'll be publicizing the results of the study. If
they don't want to release it, we don't see it.
That's to be discussed. We're looking with, we've got to look in, there's some legal, we are a public organization, and that document does become is owned by the DNBIA. We simply want to make sure that we don't put ourselves in any liability situation by releasing information that could be perceived to negatively affect some of the landowners in there. We think we're pretty safe in doing that, but we're just answering those questions before I can say to you that that's the plan.
Thank you.
Councillor Apache.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. My first question deals with the slide that showed the $217,000 that was reimbursed. That was the money we advanced on your 2013 thing?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Then to Mr. Howard, if I may. I'm a little confused about the expiry date. And I read in the report somewhere that even the solicitor had no comments on it, but how did we get to this discrepancy?
Acting Chair, I'm not actually sure how we got to the discrepancy with the dates. We are proposing to correct them in this next round of bylaw drafting if Council directs me to do so. The date expires on June 30th. However, the funds are clearly stated to be used for 2013, which is our calendar year. So for the benefit of clarity, we are recommending that the bylaw be addressed now so that there's certainty to all of the volunteers that are tasked with spending this money in 2013, that they in fact have the authority to do so. Otherwise, it may fall back on Mayor and Council to deal with the balance of those funds for 2013. We just aren't sure. It was very unclear to us, even with our legal opinion.
Two more short follow-ups, if I may. Well, before I ask the question, I think I should thank you for your contribution to the Portland Loo, so-called, Diana Krall. The question is, I noticed on one of your slides that you're planning to place 2 public washrooms in both BIAs. Where might they be?
So I think that slide simply mentioned that the board recognized at our last strategic planning session the need for 2 public washrooms. Okay. In one, and most specifically, I believe the discussion, and I'm sure I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, but was one in the downtown and one in the old city quarter.
And final question: will we ever get a Diana Krall Plaza where people want to be?
We've certainly identified the need to put more time and effort into making Diana Krall a more pleasant place for people to assemble and to host events. And it's definitely on our radar screen. It's something that we're working on, and I think we've already identified some things that we can do to improve that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I just have one for you, Mr. Cooper. In your list of projects, Diana Krall was the final project. Were those projects prioritized, or?
Yes, so when we went through the strategic planning session that Ian Howitt was so kind, was nice enough to coordinate for us, they were prioritized, and we basically start at number 1 and work our way down.
Thank you. We'll see no further questions. The staff's recommendation. Oh, sorry, Councillor McKay.
So at this time, we're looking at a 5-year renewal, and you're asking for a 7?
We're simply saying that the longer the renewal is, the more time that we can spend focusing on not the politics of a renewal. And so we're happy with a 5 to 7 years, 7 years being the ideal, but ultimately we'll look for your input.
Okay, I'm. One of the things that we talked about here recently with Mr. Wells was at the podium previously with the Chamber. That we need to start making decisions about where we're going, what our needs and what our wants. A fully funded BIA is unusual, and I think it's unique in British Columbia. I met a gentleman recently that came from Corner Brook, Newfoundland, who's a community of 18 to 20,000. Their business community was able to raise $5 million on their own to fund, for their benefit, a BIA. And I'm concerned about going too far out with funding, because at some point, we may, how do I want to put it? A lot of these items, like BIAs and symphonies and, Parks and Rec initiatives, et cetera, we may they may become wants more than needs. So I just want to, until we have that conversation about what the community wants and needs based on future taxation, I think I'm not much more comfortable than going more than 3 years.
Order, there isn't a motion
No,
to argue
time.
one way or the other in terms of length of time, and so I would move to receive the delegation.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Paget. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. The staff's recommendation then is that council instructs staff to prepare draft bylaws for the renewal of Business Improvement Area Number 1 and Business Improvement Area Number 2. Do I have a motion to?
I'll move that recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Paget. All in favour? Opposed? Note that Councillor McKay is opposed.
That's
Thank you.
good.
And balance is in favour. Thank you. Now we can ask that the mayor to come back.
$7 for that.
So C.
So C, award of tender for 1378, which is South Fork Water Treatment Plant general contract. The purpose is to obtain council approval to award tender 1378, the general contract for the water treatment plant. The tenders expire on 2013, April 6th, and council direction is required before the tender period has lapsed. The staff recommendation is that a motion be made that council award tender 1378 for the South Fork Dam water treatment plant general contract to the low bidder, Canadian AIDAN Contracting Limited, for the revised tender price of $45,849,600, excluding GST.
Move to staff's recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Councillor Pachi.
To staff, if I may. We know it's over the budget that we had, and I know that you have talked to Canadian and have whittled it down somewhat, but I also seem to remember reading here that there's going to be a further effort in order to do that. Could you expand a little bit about that?
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Hickey, or Mr. Sims. Go ahead.
Mr. Sims, go ahead.
Your Worship, that's correct. The contractor has experienced similar projects like this before, where the design comes in over budget, or the tenders come in over budget, and they're used to working with the clients, in this case the city, to get this more in line with, closer to the budget. The savings we see here are the initial ones, the ones that we can really grab onto. But it's a longer period, a process of looking for other opportunities, engaging subcontractors and suppliers to a deeper level, looking for further opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
I think staff was able to reduce the bid, which was above what we had projected, by $1.7 million. And it's also my understanding that council, depending on the vote, of course, will continue to negotiate with the general contract selected to see if there's any further reductions that are possible. It's been moved and seconded. I see no further questions. On the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Kipp opposed. Balance of council in favor. The motion passes. Excuse me. Bylaws. Excuse me. The bylaws with no accompanying report. A motion that highway closure and dedication removal portion of Meredith Road adjacent to 1720 Meredith Road, bylaw 2013, number 7163, pass third reading. Second. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. And we're moving down to notice the motion. And I think Councillor Brennan, you had a motion?
This is my notice of motion.
Notice of motion.
Right. That staff bring forward a report that provides an assessment of the city's current heritage tax exemption program to ensure it is up to date with current legislative options and to evaluate the processing of these applications in terms of equity and efficiency.
Okay, and that's going to appear on the next agenda then as a motion. I see, is there any other business? And we'll move into item 18, question period, on agenda items only.
Yeah.
My name is Fred Taylor, and I would like to ask a question of what I've heard about St. Andrews Street building, because I heard some rumors that a beam had to be removed. Am I correct?
Mr. Kenny?
Your Worship, she has that option to remove the suite and return it to normal bedrooms in the downstairs, or she can retain the suite and deal with the upgrades.
I think also Mr. Swaby indicated that depending on the position of the beam, we're primarily concerned with public safety, and if there's a access or egress out of the building that won't involve that beam, there may be option around that.
So there is a method to maintain the beam, because that's what my question is leading to.
I think, Councillor, you were here too for the meeting, and I think Mr. Swaby, somebody on council asked the question about the beam. I can't remember what it was, and Mr. Swaby's response was that if the beam doesn't create a hazard for anyone having to leave in an emergency such as a fire, that it may be possible to leave the beam.
Because
that's my understanding.
It would be my opinion that it would be part of the structural framework of the building, and to mislead, in my opinion, someone to remove it is sort of dangerous, because it's part of the support of the building as it goes up.
No, I think, if we now hire, we've got firemen out there that are 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", and if the bottom of the beam is 6'2", that's not a lot of clearance, and in a smoke-filled room,
Therefore, the
creates a
building
hazard.
is inhabitable.
It's to replace it with
Yeah.
a lower profile beam.
I don't think there's any intent that we're going to remove the beam and see how long the whole house stays up. I mean,
Saying is the beam that's been used is over capacity.
could be, yeah. Okay, thank you. All right.
Ron Boland, 3165 King Richard Drive. I continually heard it again tonight that the city cannot, must exceed, have money left at the end of the year, that we somehow can't manage our affairs. I'm curious, is it not the case that reserves can be used to fill any void that comes in on a budget at the end of the year?
A lot of the reserves are committed in specific ways. They can't be used for any purpose, and maybe Mr. Kenny might want to elaborate on that. DCCs, for example, can only be used for DCCs, even though we have a reserve for that. And Mr. Kenny, you want to elaborate on how that works?
Yeah, just to confirm that some reserves are committed, but there are reserves that are available for allocation. For example, council has allocated $2.5 million from capital reserve for the Colleray Dam project. So that's an example of a reserve being used to lower the tax requirement in a subsequent year, but it's part of the budget. It wouldn't be acceptable to spend the money but not have a source of revenue. That would be running a deficit, and the city cannot do that. So the reserve has to be allocated in advance to provide the revenue to fund the service. And,
So we have to add $3 or $4 million to every year to reserves in order to meet the requirements?
no, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, well, that's what I'm trying to understand. It seems to me if in my budget I spend, more than I have, as long as I'm covered with savings, I'm fine. So I don't quite understand. We keep continually building our reserves by taking $3 or $4 million a year in taxes, more than is necessary to meet the requirements of our budget. And I'm just not sure why we need to do that when we have reserves available that can fill a void if we run into that situation.
Maybe.
Fair point. Councillor Paget, you want to go?
I have just a comment on that, which is what I used during the electronic meeting, which is that when you're dealing with, those reserves are not planned for on purpose, as far as I know. And I mean the surplus. That kind of happens by accident, as far as I'm concerned. And if we're dealing with the surplus that we had this year of 2.5 on a budget of 176 million, then maybe we should look into the history and see how many surpluses we've had over the years. That might be an interesting exercise, but I don't think they're achieved on purpose. But
Well,
prove me wrong.
I would say if you look at the record, and it has been $3 or $4 million for 10, 15, I don't know how many years, and to say that's by accident, that's a bit peculiar. I don't want to spend a lot of time arguing about this. All I want to understand, I believe that it is built in a sense. We know we're not going to fill certain positions. We can pick the time we fill them. We can schedule projects. We can do a lot of things that make sure that we come in under and have money to put into reserves. My question is that a good policy in the long run? That's all. One other quick question, which is really technical. I noticed in tonight's agenda, during the council meeting, there was no opening to ask questions about the budget. Now, that, as I understand it, is to be a part of the meeting itself in every meeting up until May 25th or whenever it is.
Yeah, May 15th.
Was
But
this
you're right.
strictly
So, Your Worship,
kosher?
there was actually an hour and a half called the Budget Forum, and at my direction, I asked staff to take out the other item on the agenda because I thought it was redundant to do it twice.
And remember that what we spoke about tonight, Mr. Boland, was supposed to be, and I think largely was, specifically related to the budget. So we had 90 minutes
I
dealing with
understand
budget
that.
issues.
My question really relates to the fact that it was not part of the official meeting. The community meeting was moved outside of the agenda.
But my
And
understanding,
there may
didn't-
have been people who have more
That could have been.
questions. that
But
they
didn't
would-
you come forward during that time yourself and ask a budget question?
I did.
So you had the opportunity?
Yes, I did, but
Oh,
I
okay.
might have had more questions.
Oh, I see. Fair.
Anyway.
Okay.
It's a technical question,
Fair
but I think
question,
it's
too.
Okay.
questionable.
Councillor Badgie, do you have something else on it? No? And then Councillor Kip?
Well, no, reserves are basically our ability to look into the future and see what our deficits might run when we base out our balance, our budget. Like, for example, next year, we're looking at bringing in $14,380,000 from our reserves. This year's 1.175, which matches up some of the surplus. We hope to have a surplus in the 2015 and 2016 areas of 1 million of that. But we're pulling 14 million out next year. That's water treatment plants, some of the big things. So we actually have run a deficit next year, but we knew that was coming 5-6 years ago, so we put reserves aside.
Okay.
And I think part of me says that's good planning. If we have a surplus and it's by luck, I'm concerned. Surplus building means good management, good spending, watching what you're doing, reducing things, not by luck. If we're at a stage of luck with surpluses, we're in more trouble than I think. That's just mine.
I just remember this building was built on those surpluses too.
Yeah, at 51%.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Move adjournment? Second, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.